Good evening, good morning, wherever you may be around the globe, in the chat room, wherever you are. This is Late Night in the Midlands. I'm Michael Vera, and of course, this broadcast is coming at you live from the capital city, Columbia, South Carolina, on the east coast of these United States, up to the satellites above Earth and into your homes, your mobile devices, and however you may be listening. Folks, we've got a good one tonight. I'm looking forward to getting into tonight's show. World War II saw the advent of many top secret projects aimed at developing new forms of weaponry and technology. Obviously, the most famous of these was the Manhattan Project, which yielded the nuclear bombs used to end the war with Japan. And others have either been forgotten or, more on a sinister level, have been covered up due to their dangerous implications and pretty much unexpected results. One of these darker experiments, according to some, took place right in my home state of New York State, in the town of Montauk on Long Island's eastern end. And they say the effects of the evil experiments that did take place there are still being felt. And in fact, some say they are still going on. Well, tonight we will talk with my guest, Christopher Gaetano, and we will be discussing the Montauk Chronicles. That is the Montauk Project. He has created the Montauk Chronicles, which pretty much brings awareness to this project that was going on. And so we're going to get into it pretty extensively tonight with Christopher. I'm looking forward to it. And of course, we will always take calls from you, the listener, as we get moving here. Of course, don't call in now and don't call in when the guest first gets on, but give us a little bit and we'll certainly bring you aboard. I want to direct everybody to the website, www.latenightinthemidlands.com. Go on over, become a member, be informed, and by all means, inform others. The call-in number tonight is 803-317-2264. When we do start taking calls, my guest is linked up on the homepage of latenightinthemidlands.com as well. And we've got a little bit of news we're going to get into here. And just before we get to our guest tonight, I want to give a shout out to our radio affiliates, the Dark Matter Radio Network. Hello to all of you who are listening to this one on a Saturday night. Please do not call in because it's recorded for you. Everybody else, we are here live. Hello to K98 Talk, everybody listening there. And, of course, High Point Radio, the top of New Jersey, covering New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania through 100.5 FM and 1700 AM. The night sky in December, it says here, a new Cold War waged not on Earth, but in space. A war not with nuclear-tipped missiles, but with destructive laser beams traveling at the speed of light and reaching their targets 50,000 times faster than today's missiles. A new Cold War seems certain to start within the next few decades, waged not on Earth, but again in space. It would be carried on with, they say they could reach Earth from a point as far away as the moon 1.25 seconds after it's been fired. It is no coincidence, they say, that the Chinese state media are talking openly of plans to establish a military base on the moon's surface. I guess nobody told them that somebody's already there, from which beams could be used to destroy any desired target on Earth or in Earth orbit. How safe are y'all feeling now? Believe me, this stuff is already existing. I can't prove it, but I strongly feel like we've already got this technology. Maybe, I don't know about on the moon, which I'm sure we do, but it's definitely up there orbiting the planet. They say this idea seems certain to represent the long-term future of war, because that is the future, war. The Beijing Times referred to the Death Star from the first Star Wars film of 1977, approvingly in an article a year ago. So the Death Star from Star Wars, boy, that comes up a lot, don't it? I'm telling you, that could be your whole Nibiru thing. You know, who knows? We may have built it. The article cited experts in China who boosted that the moon could be transformed into a deadly weapon. Oh, there you go. Maybe Mr. Koss is right. Maybe the moon's going to get destroyed in September. I don't know. We'll see. We'll wait and find out. Titan, future home of mankind, with water that could generate breathable oxygen and nitrogen, methane, and ammonia that can be used to fertilize growing food. Saturn's giant moon has often been cited as a possible colony in space. All the solar system's moons have almost barren surfaces. The exception is Saturn's giant moon Titan, seen in a film which is linked up with this article of an imagined flight over its landscape of huge lakes and ranges of low mountains. They say that Titan's atmosphere has even more nitrogen than Earth, but its surface is not remotely like Earth. Its lakes are methane, and its overcast skies are a hazy brown. Well, maybe they're using different sprays in the atmosphere there. I don't know. They say that the surface of cloud-shrouded Titan was mysterious until the European probe parachuted onto it in 2005. The probe found lakes and seas containing hundreds of times more natural gas and other liquid hydrocarbons. Well, this would explain why they're so anxious to get there. It's not that they want to have another place for you and me. They're thinking, ooh, natural gas, all these things, another planet to destroy for them. They say that it has more known oil and natural gas reserves than all of Earth. Just one of the lakes there on Titan. So interesting. They're looking to expand their evil operations throughout the galaxy. Is climate change caused by astronomical events beyond our control? Well, we often talk about that. Some would bring up old Planet X there, but I don't know if that's exactly what they're talking about here. It says that there is a growing evidence that the state of our atmosphere is dominated by the violent outbursts of energy that our solar system meets on its eternal passage through the Milky Way. Now, this would make sense to me. I mean, why wouldn't different energies that we're passing through out, within our solar system, the galaxy, why wouldn't that affect our weather in some manner? But that's not to say that, there's more here on Earth controlling our weather than anything out in space. They say as many as 20 Pleiades stars have exploded as supernovas in the last million years, sending out cosmic rays that hit our atmosphere like atomic bullets. These rays create the aerosol droplets that form the low-altitude clouds that bring us cold weather. The evidence for this is known solidly confirmed, they said, is solidly confirmed. They did an experiment, apparently, in 2011. So anyways, you can check all this out over on LateNightInTheMidlands.com under News and Discovery. I have another one here that I think is interesting to mention. At least it's worth mentioning. Impending collision of galaxies, they say, threaten mass extinctions in 4 billion years, though. So, I know doomsdayers are upset now. We got to wait 4 billion years? Been waiting long enough for Planet X, right? According to this, we could be next. Mice NGC 4676. They say when two galaxies collide, they got a NASA Hubble image here of the galaxies. The great galaxy of Andromeda and is now rushing towards our Milky Way. They say that the two are at some point within the next 3 to 4 billion years will interpass. They will kind of, I guess, haunt each other, for lack of a better word. And they say that it could cause a lot of problems, that these galaxies will keep intertwining until they become one galaxy. So they say these two galaxies are performing an extraordinary dance. They have already passed through each other in a gravitational process, but now they're going to basically pass through each other again. Only this time it's going to be a longer dance, apparently. But again, we've got about 4 billion years, they're saying. The stars in each of them are unlikely to have collided because they are so far apart, but the environment inside the galactic pair will be most life-threatening. They say there will be huge increases in the rate of star formation, leading to a corresponding rise in supernova and cosmic rays. Now, that will affect our weather and, mass extinction. So we will not be here to enjoy all that trauma. First ever bionic heart, and it doesn't have a beat. There we go. Now we can all not only get the chip, but they'll give us all the bionic heart too. Now, I'm not going to put too much down on this. I mean, if it saves lives, great. But you know what? I still say I'd rather be gone than have all this stuff. And that's just how I feel. But anyways, developed in Australia, the Bivacker bionic heart has the potential to keep blood pumping around a patient's body for up to 10 years and to do it without that person exhibiting any sort of pulse. So you will have no pulse, no heartbeat. Being much smaller and less prone to wear and damage than other types of artificial hearts, the new bionic organ has proven so successful in animal trials that it could start appearing in humans, they say, in the next 3 years, within the next 3 years. They said, given the number of people who have the need of a new heart every year and how few donor hearts are available to meet that demand, the new bionic heart could soon be saving thousands of lives. They say that they expect that it would last at least 10 years. Now, my question is, so are you telling me in 10 years you got to open my chest back up and replace that thing again? I mean, it's not like a simple oil change in the car. See, I wouldn't want nothing like that. I mean, can you hook it up on the outside so when it does break, you can fix it quickly? Or, how will that work? I'm really curious. All I can say, I'm sure that if you're at that point, well, maybe that's a good thing. For me, the thought of cracking open my chest and putting some man-made, and my luck, it'd be made in China. So, then you got the lead poisoning and God knows what else. Folks, we're going to take a break here. You know what? I got a couple more minutes here, so why don't I give you a little more? I'm sure some of you have heard now that Israel, the U.S. is mad at Israel because Israel spied on the Iran nuclear talks with the U.S. Can you imagine the U.S. is mad at somebody for spying? Does that make any sense? They're mad because somebody spied? Oh, geez. NSA, anybody? NSA. Sweden intercepts Russian planes over Baltic region tensions, they say. So there you go. More war games going on around the world. I know you haven't seen them here yet, so it's not real, right? Well, it is, and eventually it's going to come here. They're doing all those tests in Texas. I raised the curiosity flag on that one. All right. So why don't we do this? Why don't we take this break and then let's come back with my guest, Christopher, tonight. And let's talk about some secret type, black op type projects. Let's talk about some good secret projects, some interesting stuff like maybe the Montauk project. We'll talk about that when we come back. This is Late Night in the Midlands. I'm Michael Vera, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. L&M Radio Network and Late Night in the Midlands depends on you, the listener. Without you, there would be no us. So help us continue to bring you the best guests with the best information and subscribe today. Information on becoming an L&M subscriber can be found at the top of LateNightInTheMidlands.com. Just click the About Subscriptions tab and become part of the family while helping the truth stay alive. And while you're at it, maybe subscriptions aren't for you. A one-time donation helps as well. Click that donate button on the right side of LateNightInTheMidlands.com and help us help you.
Hello, this is Dick Farrell, here to tell you about OxySilver. Legally available only through CureShop.com and HealthyWorldStore.com. Don't be fooled buying silver products from copycats and criminals. You've heard Dr. Leonard Horowitz and experts urge you to avoid deadly vaccinations and illegal operators selling stolen OxySilver and OxySilver copycats. You've heard experts tell you about suppression in alternative medicine and confusing propaganda in healthcare and the truth movement. Read Dr. Horowitz's book, Healing Celebrations, to learn how miracle healings can be made to happen through faith, prayer, and a pure diet. Get great immunity using vitamin C, D, and OxySilver. Liquid Dentist, GI Flora Pro, a top-shelf probiotic. Use Green Harvest as a great-tasting meal substitute for energizing organic nutrients and losing weight. And Zeolove, and natural clays for detoxifying your body. More advice, all these products and more are available from theCureShop.com. Including OxySilver, the world's most powerful silver hydrosol. Electro-energized to put risky injections, toxic antibiotics, and deadly drug pushers out of business. OxySilver is covalently bonded to water. Unlike any other silver product using the frequency of chlorophyll 528, what Dr. Horowitz explains is pure tone love, the universal healer. NASA originally developed covalently body silver hydrosols to keep astronauts healthy in space. Dr. Horowitz added the 528 frequency to NASA's formula and more. OxySilver works three ways to electrocute dangerous germs better than anything, far better than all leading silver products, and without any risk. OxySilver oxygenates and resonates with 528 for faster healing. So help save lives, putting drug lords and criminals out of business, and keep the LNM network broadcasting. Register for our free cooperative at healthworldaffiliates.com/4948. That's healthworldaffiliates.com/4948. And buy OxySilver and other great products in package specials at great discounts from theCureShop.com. Buy OxySilver, GI Flora Pro, Green Harvest, Zeolove, and Love Minerals at great discounts at CureShop.com. That's CureShop.com with two P's. CureShoppe.com. Or call toll-free at 1-888-621-7611. That's 1-888-621-7611. Do it now.
We know you want the truth. That's why we created Late Night in the Midlands. From the Philadelphia Experiment to the Philadelphia Caller.
Well, first off, I want to say I'm enjoying your show. I wish there was something like this up in Philadelphia.
And from West Columbia to you.
Taking no smoking nothing. I'm just out of work, blue collar man. But you know, like I told her once again, you know, sometimes coast to coast, the subject matter gets boring. I've been listening to Late Night in the Midlands since they've been on. I think it's pretty cool. And again, like I said, this is what we need around here.
And every now and then you hear it first, right here on Late Night in the Midlands.
With the old painless from President.
Well, the first thing is, to be fair, don't you think Mr. Paul and I ought to flip the coin?
Absolutely.
Why do I have to be VP?
Well, I was thinking,
you know, I'm fair. Let's destiny take it. Flip the coin in the air. If it's heads, I win. Tails, he wins.
Hey, that sounds good to me.
No, it wouldn't matter either one of us. It would be, you know. And I'll tell you this: if Ron were to run again, and if he came to me and asked me to run with him, I will state this: I would give it very sincere and deep consideration.
You just never know who's going to call in on Late Night in the Midlands.
We have George Norrie from Coast to Coast AM. Good evening, George.
Hey, Michael, I promised you I'd call in for a little bit, and here I am.
So, folks, when I say Late Night in the Midlands covers everything, we really do cover everything. back. This is Late Night in the Midlands. I'm Michael Vera. We're going to get to the guest in just a moment. I want to tell you a little bit about him first. And I'll tell you, I really expect this to be a really good show tonight. Christopher Gaetano is my guest. Christopher is a passionate filmmaker, a graduate of the prestigious School of Visual Arts in New York City. He burst onto the scene with his fascinating documentary, Horror Business, about the agony and ecstasy of working in the indie horror world. Most recently, he has written and directed the documentary Montauk Chronicles, and based on the Montauk Project, which we'll get into deeply tonight. His website is mtkchronicles.com, and we're going to bring him on with us here in just a moment. And who knows, maybe you want to get involved in tonight's conversation as we get things moving. You're more than welcome to do that at 803-317-2264. You can also call in using Skype. Our Skype ID is Late Night in the Midlands. And again, if you're listening on the Dark Matter Radio Network, and I know you are, then it is recorded for you. And again, please do not call in because you're not going to get nobody. All right. So let's go ahead and see if we could pull our guest on with us here just a couple minutes early. We're usually late. We're a couple minutes early tonight.
Hello.
Hello, Christopher. This is Michael Vera with Late Night in the Midlands. How are you?
Hi, Michael. I'm pretty good.
Oh, great. First off, we're live, and I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is a very, very interesting topic, and, I've been checking out some of your work, and I think that you've done some fascinating work with this, and I thought maybe, Christopher, if you're ready, we can maybe start all this with a little background and how you began this journey. And again, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. Thank you. Well, let's see how it began. I guess I could go back to when I first learned of the Montauk Project itself.
Sure.
And was catching some secondhand information about it when I was in film school. And that was from a friend named Eric Swanson, who actually appears in the movie Montauk Chronicles that I made. And, I looked at some of the available literature at the time, which at that time was only one book. And, I felt there wasn't a lot to it in terms of how it was laid out in the actual document. And I felt there were some things missing, and I felt maybe at times it was a little too esoteric, almost on purpose. For instance, okay, you had diagrams of said technology laid out in this book. They're never fully explained, and it was almost designed where you couldn't cross-reference anything because we didn't have anything to show for. So I lost interest in that at that time because I just felt like there wasn't enough information. So it was later on that a man named John David Brody, who was involved in my first documentary, he brought the idea up to me again because he suggested I make a movie about the topic. And he was involved in I made two movies. He was involved in the first version as a producer, a co-producer. And he suggested that I make a movie about it. And he had a script called Montauk Unveiled, which I read, and I thought it was really very much him. I had nothing to do with what I wanted to do, so I suggested to him, well, if we go forward with this project together, let's try something different. What I would like to do is start with a clean slate. And the basis of the idea, of course, is that there are three men at that time. There were really only three men. There was Alfred Bionic, Preston Nichols, and Stuart Swerdlow, and there was actually four, Duncan Cameron, who doesn't appear in my picture, that were telling this tale that between 1971 and 1983, they said they were involved in different capacities in a covert clandestine experiment that occurred deep beneath the Camp Hero Air Force Base in Montauk, New York. And at that time, the base itself was supposedly defunct. I mean, there was still personnel there, but the four men claimed that there were secret experiments being conducted in a facility that was beneath the base. So almost like the military is, as we know it, is compartmentalized, that there's a possibility that the facility underneath the base was unbeknownst to the people above. So there could be men that have worked at Camp Hero and would never know what was happening in lower levels. Now, this was really interesting to me. So when going back to John Brody for a minute, I said to him, let's start with a clean slate. No offense to anybody that put the books together or whatever, but this is a conspiracy. This is an idea or a legend that we can start from scratch and begin to investigate. And what better way to do that than to go to the source that the books were created from and the stories came from? Who are these men? And that's how it started. So I started to investigate from scratch. That was the idea. Like, I had a background on it, but I wanted to hear the story from the men themselves. I wanted to conduct uninhibited interviews. I wanted to visit these men in their homes, not bring a lot of people with me where they would feel inhibited or intimidated by equipment and assistant directors and stuff like that. I mean, we could have done it that way, but in this case, it was a little more personal, barely anybody but me, and sometimes just me. And that's how it began. And I made one film and wasn't really happy with it because I think I was always trying to please John with the other film and not go singularly into my investigation, which is what I started to do in January of 2013, which is a film that everyone has seen right now. I started it from scratch again. I needed to. I retained the interviews with Alfred Bionic, of course, because he passed away in the process. But that's how it all started.
All right. And Christopher, if you could, tell the listeners exactly what the Montauk project or even Chronicles, what it is, what it was, because as far as I can tell, there were a series of top secret experiments, everything from mind control to time travel to psychotronics, and even the creation of black holes, which is something that they continue to attempt today. We hear about them wanting to bust out these black holes now. These experiments were based out of an old Air Force radar station, and I guess a vast complex that was hidden in the earth beneath a radar station, right?
Yeah, this is another thing. It was very overwhelming when, again, I don't know what you can call it. I guess you can call me a healthy skeptic, but with an urge and an interest in believing and understanding that there are many possibilities and many mysteries in the universe, and I'm so interested in them. But I take every step with caution, especially in this investigation. So it was overload of information, and what you're referring to are the legends or the ideas that are said to have taken place in this alleged facility underneath Camp Hero. Everything from time travel experiments to mind control experiments to mass murder of hundreds of thousands of children, it is said by the men who claim to have been there, to alien reverse engineering of extraterrestrial technology. And again, it's like a mecca of all paranormal happenings that are said to have occurred, and it just seems to be endless. I mean, you could scour the documents that are out there, you can look at my movie, you could find different things in all of them. And it's difficult to be scientific with any of this stuff because we don't truly have an example of the things that happened or things that are said to have happened underneath Camp Hero. When you talk to Preston Nichols about it, he refers to the technology, but it would be wonderful if he could produce in front of us on camera some of that technology, which he claims to have the ability to do so. So, in future volumes we'll do that. But my purpose in making this picture was to present the story for the very first time. I can't. It's difficult to please the people who have been reading about this for years. The idea is that you want to start fresh in a new chapter, and this is for everyone. So this is for anyone that wants to discover this idea, and the idea was to present it, and not be so influenced by all the jargon that was thrown out there that we can't really cross-reference or cross-check with anything. We can't confirm 100%. So the idea is to bring the story and condense it and try and present it to people. And that was the whole goal there. The one thing I have to say is that I do believe something happened there. And after many years, and, not only did because, there are people out there that boast about how many YouTube videos they've watched on the subject. Well, yeah, that's great. I've watched all those too, but I actually spent time with the people who claim that this happened, and had a lot of time to listen to them, hours and hours of footage and time speaking to them. And what I narrowed it down to after all of this time is that it's very possible, in comparison to things that we have more evidence for in other areas, that after all of this information, that there was a very brutal mind control and illegal mind control program that occurred down there, where people were murdered in the process. And I feel partially, even though I do believe in alien technology, and I do believe in a lot of the things that are said to have happened there, I think possibly that may have been part of the disinformation to cover up the crime. And that's what I'm leaning towards at the moment. But we can continue to discuss what the men claim happened there, of course, and I'm happy to do so.
Sure. And I'd like to get into that in just a minute. Now, what I do want to ask you, if the story actually begins in Montauk, or in New York, on Long Island, or is it Philadelphia? Because I understand that the Philadelphia experiment was actually, the informal name was a Rainbow Project, which was an attempt, they say, by the United States military to create technology that would allow vessels to achieve radar invisibility. And that the early attempt at developing what we now know these days as stealth technology. So, is that where all this stemmed from?
Well, that's Alfred Bionic had claimed that. Now, Alfred Bionic also said that the USS Eldridge disappeared during the experiment, reappeared briefly in 1983 right off of Montauk Point, and then disappeared again. Do we have any pictures of this? Do we have any evidence of this? We have Alfred Bielic's word on this. And Bionic also claimed that he was on the Eldridge as a different human being, because he was age regressed 3 times. We have to take caution with this information. Right. I am not just going to repeat what these guys said and said, "Oh yeah, it happened." I can't do that, man. I just can't.
You're show hosts, and even people in general, who will just take the word of anybody, and they never, for me too, I'm the same way. It's like, okay, this is very possible, some of these things, but I need proof. If I'm going to go and I'm going to back it up, I need to know that there's truth to it,
Right, and if we don't analyze it in this fashion, and the one I'm suggesting and the one you're suggesting, then we lose. And then what we're doing is we're just perpetuating and building upon legend, and that's great. out maybe what really happened there. Now, we might be going into dangerous territory, and I certainly don't want to get killed for this. But at the same time, if hundreds of thousands of children were murdered, that idea infuriates me. I mean, we can get to the time travel and we can get to the alien technology, which again I believe. We just need to have some more solid ground to stand on with it. We can't just be so.
Wow. So, okay. So, I mean, this would actually seem like something that, for some who haven't done research and haven't looked into this kind of thing and maybe hearing it for the first time, they're thinking, well, this is some kind of comic book or science fiction stuff, but it's not. And you took this, I would assume you took this very serious right from the start. And that's probably why you spent so many years on it.
Yeah, well, I made again, this, and I also want to make clear that I am not, at this moment in time affiliated with any Hollywood production company. I am a total guerrilla filmmaker who, worked on my own ability for quite some time and saved up money and raised a little money here and there and worked very hard for a number of years to make this movie on my own time and my own dime, and the people that contributed were great people. And, so this was a totally independent investigation and a totally independent project that's not influenced by any greater entity.
Right.
And, in that process, of course you care, because you make sacrifices. You spend day after day after day, pushing through to make something like this. It requires, I basically dedicated my life to the project for years. I've done nothing else but make this movie, and that requires a lot. It wasn't a weekend thing. It was an everyday thing that went on for years. And what I found in the process, after interviewing these men over and over again and visiting with them and talking with them, is what I'm telling you and what I truly feel in my heart happened. Do I feel that maybe there was alien technology there and that there was a time travel experiment? Possibly. But throughout this time, I found no evidence to support that, 100% support that. Outside of the most compelling evidence is that I think that there was lethal chemicals being created there that may have been buried and may have affected people, and that was concealed, and that there was also kidnapped children that may have been used for a mind control program there and murdered. And those things are enough. And I think if we can start with the stuff that's a little more plausible and a little more provable, then maybe that would lead us to these other things. It would lead us to more evidence of other things going on. But I think we need to keep level heads about our investigations, and it doesn't help us to just consistently and automatically, unconditionally confirm everything everybody says. I mean, Alfred Bionic suggested that everything was true. Everything from the black-eyed children to vampires. And hey, they might be true, but we need to regulate this wild horse. We need to get it tame for a moment so we can analyze it and try and understand it.
Yeah, and I know what you're talking about, because I have had some guests in the past who would be giving me some really good information. I'm thinking, wow, they've really got the know-how, and then they come off with something really, really strange that is really hard to believe, and they offer absolutely no evidence, and then it makes you question everything. And that's why it's important for me to try to be, anything I get into, I try to be as honest about it as I can, because especially in today's day of age, you get caught I guess passing lemons, you're going to get, that's it. You're done. No one's going to ever believe anything you say or do again. And so, I would imagine the government obviously is really good at hiding things they don't want us to know about. And the fact that they were kidnapping young boys and putting them through these tortures and even killing and murdering. I think that right there tells you enough that, I'm sure records have been either destroyed or buried within deep.
make no mistake, there are factions. There are great people in this country. There are wonderful people in this country, like yourself and myself, and we believe in our freedoms, and we believe in mutual respect, and we believe that everybody has the right to be left alone. But unfortunately, there are also some really bad people. And some of these bad people were part of our Central Intelligence, and some of these bad people were part of some covert operations that murder and destroy and manipulate and do some really terrible things that you probably wouldn't even want to know about. But you probably know about them because you do your research. But most people don't want to know. And as soon as you begin to explain something like this to them, they don't want to hear it. It's shattering their paradigm. It's shattering their whole world, and they don't want to hear it. And so I think a great way to do it, and the way I approached it in the film was what I did was, it was, instead of me thrusting my opinion at you over and over again and telling you exactly what to think, I illustrated the stories that the men were telling me, and they were science fiction stories at their core, because it's all I was used to. So the minute a man tells me, all a variety of a menagerie of creatures were underneath Camp Hero, everything from insectillions to reptiles who drink Drano. I mean, some of these stories are really funny. Preston Nichols told me stories about shape-shifting bears and giant thunderbirds landing on his roof. I mean, it's just like living in a total fantasy world. And I can't just sit there and say, oh, yeah, Professor Nichols just told me a giant bird landed on his roof, and I believe him. It's like, no, actually I don't. And it's possible that happened, but I think we need to narrow it down to the possibility that maybe, and I believe Preston was involved, but there's also this possibility that, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, but there's this possibility that Preston was very much involved, and that the idea that, he has had so many stories since then and so many supernatural happenings that he had claimed that he cannot prove to anybody at this moment, could be part of the disinfo. Could be ideas were implanted in his head. Imagine, if you will, so you have several intelligent men that are hired to be part of a program to control the minds of the populace, and they're utilizing runaways and homeless persons for this purpose. So what better way, if you were Central Intelligence or some covert operation, to conceal this? You're either going to kill these men, or let's implant the idea that aliens did this. Let's implant the idea that monsters did this. So if they ever dare tell the story to anyone, people are going to say, you're crazy.
Yeah,
perfect.
I really, you're onto something there, because I've thought about that. I've had folks on this show who have told stories that, and they honestly believe that they have been abducted by aliens, and
they may have.
Yes, they may have. But I've always asked them, have you ever given any consideration that possibly the government would implant this kind of memory into your brain, so you can't say what really happened. You're telling what really happened, but it's them actually who are behind it, and they don't want you to, it's like the date rape drug, if you will.
Right. I believe, and see, let me just make this clear. I believe that there is intelligent life in other galaxies and other solar systems. The probability is through the roof. It's basically confirmed that it's out there. It's out there somewhere, and most likely they visited here, and most likely, we can all agree on this, or it's possible that we were even created by them. So this is the weird thing, and I just want to mention this, so there's part of me that truly believes that a lot of this program may have been fabricated, a fabricated illusion to cover up a horrible, atrocious crime. But on the other hand, then you really start to if you do more research, it's very strange, because then some of the really crazy stuff starts to make some sense. And that's when I was getting very paranoid, because I didn't know what to think anymore. Of course, if you start to trace back certain bloodlines, if you start to trace back, the history of the Illuminati, and a lot of these things kind of check out. And the reason why I mention these things in particular, because they're all kind of connected to this Montauk project and projects like it, and the fact that the world is covertly being operated by this one nefarious mind or group. A lot of these things, if you really go deep, you start to find some things that may check out. But that also could be a way for us to lose our footing in an investigation. And I think so. I can't say impressed, but I think it was a positive that in 1995 there was a public hearing in Washington, and that the current president at that time admitted to experiments that are just as atrocious as what was said happened at Montauk. And that's kind of a victory, because if you have a president admitting to that, even though we know if he admits to something, you know that a lot of the other things are probably true, even though he's not acknowledging it. The fact is that there was pressure on them to say something, because someone was eventually going to prove it, and then our government would have been in pretty deep.
Well,
so,
and that's what they do, is that when they know that the truth is coming out, they'll either release something and make it sound like a dance in the park,
right,
or they'll put out some heavy disinformation to mix it all up.
Right. Well, Clinton admitted to the Tuskegee experiments, which are atrocious experiments, and tried to pass it off and say, well, it was very un-American at the time, and they shouldn't have done this. But then you had Christy Nicola, who claimed it wasn't just radiation experiments. There were mind control experiments being conducted, and not just her, but there were a lot of other people. So for me, that's enough confirmation that stuff like that happened, and that's why I believe that something like that happened at Camp Hero. And I'm going to further investigate it in several volumes, one way or another, coming up. Good. But that's what I'm going to keep my focus on, and that I feel like the idea of the extraterrestrial technology is a whole different investigation, where we could probably reach at better things and more accessible information if we want to prove that. You might not be able to prove that it happened at Camp Hero, but we can prove that it happened in other places. And I think that's what we should do. We should pick our strongest points. If we want to unanimously agree that these things have happened, I think it's really important that we grab our strongest stories with the greatest information and the best evidence, and we emphasize it until these bastards say, yes, it happened.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, we've got to press. It's so too often people either accept the official story on something, or they just don't ask them, or they get they get worn out, because these alphabet agencies, this government, I mean, they're very good at playing the waiting game. I mean, they'll hit you from every which angle. I mean, and most people just don't even want to be bothered with. A lot of people, I guess what I'm saying is, they know that there's something to this stuff, but it's easier to look the other way.
Right. And the thing that and as you were just saying, what they want us to do is they want us to focus on stuff like the giant insects and the reptilian aliens and all that stuff that's so akin to science fiction, because it will instantly discredit us. But we have to refuse and go for the strongest things, the things that they want to hide the most, which what I think in this situation, what they want to hide the most is the murder of all these children. And so if we go look at things like MK Ultra and consistently you can't back down just because Clinton said, hey, we're sorry, it wasn't us. No way. That's when the dragon is wounded and it's crawling away saying, all right, see you later. That's when you kill it, you destroy it, because then it's weak. And so same thing with this. If we can get somebody to admit that a program like this sort of happened, that's when we just go for the throat and we hit harder. That's a victory, but then you don't rest on that. And I think that was the issue. I think a lot of these people were compensated at that time. They were somewhat placated, and then they stopped. And then it starts to become stuff of legend. And then we start to hear, every science fiction, every paranormal story is now happening in the bottom of Camp Hero, which, yes, it's fun to read about all that stuff, but for me it's frustrating because I feel like something really did happen there. And whether that stuff happened or not, we need to focus on the stuff that is being concealed, the stuff that they're trying to hide from us, and the stuff that can incriminate. Those are the things I want to continuously look at.
Has there been any mysterious deaths around this, people who seem to have gotten too close and they just mysteriously disappear?
In regard to the Montauk Project, I mean, you can't really say Alfred Bielik's, and I'm not saying you're saying that, but some people have. You can't say Alfred Bielik's death was a mysterious death. The man was ill for a number of years. Al did say that he felt his strokes were induced and that he was being attacked. But again, that's his word, and I respect his word, but I can't confirm it. And he was an old man when he passed away. And Preston Nichols is still alive, and he's consistently telling his story. And Stuart Swerdlow is very much alive, and he's telling his story every day. And books are being published, and stories are being told. So, Duncan Cameron has basically, by choice, has kept himself in obscurity, at least as of now. I know he wanted to write his memoirs and stuff, but these guys are out there, and no one's stopping them. And I would think those would be the guys to have, if I was the bad guy, if these guys were threatening me and my crime, those are the guys I would have killed first. Somehow, everybody would have mysteriously died in an accident or a stroke or whatever. But these guys are telling the science fiction story. Remember that. And I only say that because that's what it is in the eyes of many people. So the real story, I'd say, the people that are telling it, the person that's telling it the most is Stuart Swerdlow. And he's gone through a lot of frustrating situations, people consistently trying to discredit him and say different things. And you could say what you want about him, but he has told the Montauk Boy story consistently for a number of years, and there's something to it.
Oh, so, I believe there is. I do. And they don't always kill to shut a person up either. I mean, they could just make it look like outrageously crazy. I mean, you see the mainstream media do it all the time. They'll get together in their little segments sometimes and talk about some of these conspiracies and make them look like they're just, you got to be out of your mind. It's like, these internet conspiracy theorists, and so it gets blown under the rug. And I say, the crazier somebody sounds, you might want to give it at least a listen.
I agree, and that's why I spent 10 years of my life listening to guys like this. And I again, after this much time of listening to Preston Nichols, and you'll see a lot of the raw interviews on the Blu-ray or the DVD of Montauk Chronicles, because that's where I decided to put them. I mean, I made a movie. I couldn't just string interviews together and throw them out there like I've seen in some so-called documentaries. Those aren't movies and those aren't documentaries. Those are interviews. I made a movie. I made a documentary, a docudrama, and so that stuff is for extended interviews, and you can see that Preston has a true emotion and a true reaction to things. When he speaks about the Montauk Boys program in particular, comedy is out the window. But then he'll tell the story about the giant reptilian commander who came over and drank Drano while he was soldering aluminum. I mean, it's a funny story. Sorry, but it's hilarious. I can't say it didn't happen, but it doesn't add to any credibility. It doesn't. It takes away. It takes away from trying to prove anything, because the minute you approach the government, they'd love that, especially if a crime was committed and they know about it. They would love to hear about the giant reptilian who drinks Drano. They'd be like, okay, see you later.
Well, yeah, and that's what I mean. They'll take true stories and they'll add some kind of craziness in it to make it all. But sometimes they'll use a little bit of one truth, a little bit of another truth, mix them up, and they've got so many ways of doing it. And but you're right. I mean, I've had people who've come on talking about they've time traveled, but then they go and throw something in like they what's his name, a comedian, I forget his name now, but they say the guy tells me, yeah, I'm listening to him, and then he tells me, well, yeah, when I went back in time, this comedian was butchering little kids in front of in a stadium of people, and I'm thinking, all right, you're gonna have to prove that to me now.
Right.
Like,
anyone tells you, Michael, that they traveled through time, tell them I need what. Okay, I mean, if there are guys that say they fought in Vietnam and came back and wrote books about their experiences, and they didn't. They were like in the rear. They never saw any action. They made stories up so they can sell books. And I think it's this kind of organic thing that's happening here. I think there are a lot of credible people that have had encounters. Like, I feel Travis Walton, 100%. This guy went through what he said he went through. Yes,
Amen.
He sold a book. But there are also the guys who fought in Vietnam and wrote books and were there. So it's that kind of thing.
Well, and I can tell you something else about Travis Walton, too, and that is that he took, I think, 4 lie detector tests. He passed them all. And as a matter of fact, the other guys, 4 or 5 other guys, and they all passed lie detector tests, too. So, I mean, I could see one guy being a good enough liar that he gets through it. But all of them, I mean, that's no coincidence.
And for that same reason, I believe that. And I read Travis's book, and it's a good book. It's well written, but at the same time, it just seems to be coming from an honest man. And just because a man might be trying to make a living from his story, like so many people do throughout history and have. I mean, Ben Franklin, is doing the same thing. So it's like, it doesn't mean you're dishonest because you're trying to make a living from your experiences. So we need to really get down to the details. It seems everyone just wants to see things at surface level and see it in black and white, and that's not how things are. They're very organic. There's details to everything. It's just not so black and white. So to sift through the bad stuff, I would say just think about the details of the story. If someone went through something so amazing and so atrocious and so incredible, as some people say the Montauk Project was, I know I went through some wonderful and terrible things in my life, and I can give you details. I can tell you what the smell in the room was. I could tell you what the texture of the wall was. I could tell you what color this and that was, because it's just in my memory, and it's real, and I can give you thousands of little details. And if they're not giving you that, and it's really thin, I'd say that's the first clue that this stuff was made up.
I would agree with that. I agree with that. I mean, believe me, and I've been doing this almost 8 years, and I've had some incredible stories told to me, and and I believe most of the people who come forward with this stuff, especially the abductees, when they come forward, it's, well, you don't ask them for proof. Well, yeah, I do, but they usually don't have it. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen. So, and I think that most of the people who come up with these stories are telling truth. At least they believe what they're telling me. But
sure.
Then there's probably that 5% that make it up just because they want to be famous or sell a book. And, shame on those people. Those are the people who I sometimes expose if I find out, because I mean, it really muddies up the waters, and I really want to get to the truth on these things. So I don't like when people muddy it up. So when you went into these interviews with these experiencers, you went in pretty much as a skeptic. And right, so
I had to.
Yeah.
And I've seen skeptics, like professional skeptics. There was one guy at the pardon me for not remembering your name, sir, but he's a professional skeptic. He was at the International UFO Congress, and this guy's job is to just debunk everything that comes out of your mouth if it's not in line with his way of thinking. And I'm sorry, but just like these committed atheists or people like that just say, hey man, there's nothing after death. It's like, shut up. You're just as bad as the guy telling me that he flew on the back of a dragon last night, like, how do you know, I mean, there have been so many people throughout history that have experienced things that are, let's say, out of the ordinary, and enough good, credible people for us to at least consider something. So we need to, get to that neutral ground first. And then, my approach to these gentlemen was to, yes, start off skeptical, but open to everything. So I'm not going to believe what you tell me, but I'm going to listen. And I'm not going to judge you right away. I need to think about it. And I need to really do research after I talk to you. And that's how I did it. I listened to these guys. I was very respectful, because I'll never enter someone's home and be disrespectful. That's terrible, especially when they're giving you their time and they're trying to tell you a story. So I'm here to listen, and that was it. Tell me from the beginning. I don't care if you assume I read the book that was out there. It doesn't matter. It's like, let's say this is day one. The book doesn't exist, but I have an idea of what you're telling, and I want to know now from the beginning. And that was my approach with the film. I wanted this film to be an introduction, regardless if you already knew things or not. And so the interviews in my movie don't exist anywhere else. And as far as I've seen, and I've seen every other interview that's been conducted with these gentlemen, there has nothing been conducted in the past. There was nothing conducted in the past that is as compelling and as emotional and as deep as the interviews that I found with these men, that I could find. The rest of them were in a way, very bland. And yeah, they said a lot of information, but information you can't prove. So yeah, I know you can have Preston tell you about technologies that existed for 7 hours. Have him prove one thing. So the idea was to get some emotion out of him, which I did. Never saw that in an interview before with Preston, outside of the one I conducted. And he got angry when we were talking about the Montauk boys. And he got uncomfortable. And that's important, because those things, however not blatant, they're there. And those subtleties say a lot. And they say a lot more than 7 hours of esoteric technology that you cannot prove. And I think those are the things we need to pay attention to, those in an investigation. And I think that's what professional investigators, in terms of the FBI, a lot of the time they're paying attention to things like that, these little subtle things, body language, facial expression. And again, it's not so blatant. You have to really pay attention, because it's the subtleties. There's volumes inside the subtleties, that you can find and you can analyze over and over again.
You're so right, and I do that with some of the guests that I'll have who will say that they fought demonic entities or something. Well, if something like that happens, when their emotions come out in it, and a lot of times they do, that means they're reaching in. They're telling you how they felt at that time. You're seeing it, and so it makes it more real, and you could believe it more. But if they're so sometimes they'll just start making the story up in their head and trying to remember it because they made it up, and at that point you don't get the emotions unless they're fake, and usually you can tell. So yeah, I like the way you do things.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. That's just, and I'm going to continue to. I'm going to tackle saturated subject matter. This is my plan. I'm covering ghost stories next and other topics. Saturated subject matter in ways that have never been approached before or are not good enough. And it seems like we've had 40 plus years or so in the public eye of this stuff, especially now. It's so oversaturated. Any investigation of any conspiracy or the paranormal is oversaturated. The idea is to approach it in ways we've never approached before. It seems like everybody follows the last guy, and nobody wants to break outside and try something different. And so that's what I want to do, because I've been interested in this subject matter since I was a child, and I never understood why people didn't try different things with it. I mean, I don't know how many times we're gonna see another Sasquatch expedition and 4 idiots walking out in the woods making duck calls. This animal's not gonna, or whatever it is not gonna come near you. It's extremely elusive to begin with, and it's not gonna come and visit you. it knows that you're there, and it's hiding very well. It's probably 10 times more intelligent than any of the people out there searching for it. So the idea is, let's, just using this as an example, you would have every single person on the expedition that have some sort of tracking ability or hunting ability. Then they would have to wash their scent off with the same soap that hunters usually do that with as well. And start there, and then understand and try and think like this elusive creature, if it does exist, and I think it does, in many places in the world, that it has a vantage point, and that it knows you're coming, and that it can smell you, and where is it going to be? And, that's the idea. You can't let it see you coming. And then I think that's a way we can find it. But the very responsible question in that particular situation would be, should we find it? Because if we do, unfortunately, we're going to be giving away its location, and then idiots are going to come and try and kill it. So
yeah, either that or we find out and now we know too much, and whoever discovers it doesn't get to live to tell anybody about it.
That's another possibility too, and I've read several things on the subject matter. So we have a lot of things planned down the road, and we want to make it interesting and exciting, of course, and all of that's very entertaining. But there's a core to it, and we want to discover these things. And I think the whole idea here is that we evolve when we discover. If we discover the truth in these conspiracies, we evolve because we catch the bastards who committed the crimes, and they won't do it again because we're enlightened and we know the truth, and we won't let them do it again. And that's the thing, I think that's the whole goal here. And, the people who just want to be entertained, you can be entertained even more so in the process, but let's do it right.
Yeah, that's right. And there are shows, it's something I pet peeve about, and sometimes people think I'm just picking, but it really irritates me when shows say, well, we're the ones you need to come for all the information when they cover this stuff. It's just fully entertainment for them. They just want to have a good time, and they want to make sure they worry about everybody liking them and liking what they're talking about. And here I don't. It's, if you don't like it, turn the station. I don't care. I'm trying to get to the truth. So again,
I think people are going to like you even more, and we'll have a better time by doing it the way you just said and the way I'm saying. I mean, that's it. That's how we do it. We can't just be complacent and repeat ourselves over and over again. I mean, I stopped watching television a year ago. I just couldn't take it anymore.
Good for you. I don't watch it either. And if I do, it's just quickly to see what's going on and see what lies are being told. You talk about mind control. There's your mind control too. That's a wonderful way they've been doing it for years, is through the television. But Christopher, hang on with us for a moment. We've got to take a break, and then we'll come back. And I want to ask you more about what these men said when you sat down and talked to them, what they've told you. And so we'll get into that when we come back. Folks, the call-in number is 803-317-2264. We'll take calls in a little while. I've got more questions, and I'm sure you'll have some as well. This is Late Night in the Midlands. I'm Michael Vera. My guest is Christopher Gaetano, and we've got them linked up on the home page, latenightinthemidlands.com. So feel free to click that link. And I've watched the trailers on this movie, and I'm telling you, you're going to want to see it. I know I want to see it. So, folks, we'll be back in just a few minutes. Don't go anywhere.
You have found the best place on the internet by tuning into K98Talk.com, where it is our mission to broadcast the very best variety programming, giving you a balance of information from every angle and letting you decide. We are here to serve our listening audience with a proven track record. So stay with K98Talk.com and the Spark Radio Network. and we will keep you informed.
Hello, this is Lisa Marie, here to tell you about OxySilver, legally available only through CureShop.com and HealthyWorldStore.com. Read Dr. Horowitz's book, Healing Celebrations, to learn how miracle healings can be made to happen through faith, prayer, and a pure diet. Get great immunity using vitamin C, D, and OxySilver, Liquid Dentist, GI Flora Pro, a top-shelf probiotic. Use 528 Superfood as a great tasting meal substitute for energizing organic nutrients and losing weight, and Zeolove and natural clays for detoxifying your body. OxySilver oxygenates and resonates with 528 for faster healing. So help save lives, putting drug lords and criminals out of business, and keep the LNM network broadcasting. Register for our free cooperative at healthyworldaffiliates.com/4948 and buy OxySilver and other great products in package specials at great discounts from theCureShop.com. Buy OxySilver, GI Flora Pro, 528 Superfood, Zeolove, and Love Minerals at great discounts at CureShop.com. That's CureShop.com with 2 P's. Cure Shop. Or call toll free at 1-888-621-7611. That's 1-888-621-7611. Do it now.
It's the middle of the night and there's nothing much to do. Bring your insomniac self over to Late Night in the Midlands and learn something. We've got every topic you can think of with very little being off limits. Alien abductions, government corruptions, the stuff that's got your sleep disrupted. Come join the conversation tales and tune into Late Night in the Midlands with your host, Michael Vera.
In many cases is the idea that the aliens are essentially trying to create a hybrid mix of themselves.
Bodies were small,
they're interested in our
smaller
DNA,
than
our genetic
human
makeup.
bodies.
Beyond that, they're interested in
The heads were larger and the eyes were rather sunken and a little slanted.
Range of
and what happened
they
was
were strange.
they came to me.
They were not of this earth.
We have to face up to reality that, for example, the UFO phenomenon is a real phenomenon, no question about it. So anybody who debunks the UFO phenomenon itself don't know what he or she's talking about.
Hey, Michael, I promised you I'd call in for a little bit, and here I am.
I know that I bashed Bush the entire time. I wasn't even allowed on Coast to Coast there for a while because I was told not to talk about Bush.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Late Night in the Midlands. We cover everything.
I made love to an alien near Roswell last night. We strolled along together.
Okay, sorry again, folks. I was just telling everybody how we have been being messed with really bad here. We've had my bumper music was just ripped off the board. Don't know what happened, and now my mic was muted and I didn't mute it. So
happens every time.
I'm telling you, it's just crazy. And I'm really, folks. You listen to this show. If I make a mistake, I say I made a mistake. I'm not doing that. So we are back. This is Late Night in the Midlands on the L&M Radio Network. My guest, Christopher, he is linked up on the homepage of Late Night in the Midlands. I was saying that the Montauk project it's a very, very serious thing. I mean, it's really got a lot to do with a lot of the deceptions that we're dealing with today, I think. And this is something they don't want out. They don't want people talking about this. They'd rather we talked about the crop circle left in the cornfield or whatever, or talk about the Bigfoot hunters or something like that. And when you get into things like this, I mean, these are serious crimes that were committed. We're talking about people who were abducted and then tortured and used in experiments. I mean, this is real stuff. But Christopher, before we get messed with some more, what did these men? What did they have to say to you? What did they say? What kind of horror stories did they tell you when you sat down and spoke with these men?
Well, let me start by saying that interviewing them was setting the stage in the beginning. That it was very important to me to say to each of them. And again, Alfred, I interviewed in 2006, and I had to retain that interview and find the best stuff out of it. And I still had the same approach in 2006 to an extent, but I went back and interviewed Preston Nichols once again in 2013 and Stuart Swerdlow in 2013. I had a discussion with each of them and said, look, let's do this right. Let's be as serious as possible. I'm going to ask you hard questions. And I want you to respect that, and I will respect you. And let's see, because I said it's only going to behoove you that you're serious about this and that we're not enjoying the attention, but there's actually something really important told here. So that was my approach to start. And then the tale began to unfold. So the idea was, let's start from the beginning. What is this thing? What is this thing that you say you were a part of? How did it begin? In Preston Nichols' case, I was asking about his education. Every time I was asking where he was educated or where he acquired the knowledge, how he was hired, a lot of this stuff became very hazy for him. He said, oh, well, papers were destroyed here, this was destroyed there, which very well may be true because, of course, they want to, someone like Preston who's out, if he really was part of a program like this, as he said he was, it would be very important to the people who are trying to conceal it to completely discredit him, to eliminate any paper trail of any evidence that he could produce. Because remember, these men, however seriously you take them, are out there in the world right now selling books and going to seminars, and the thing they're not doing at the moment, and they have their reasons for this, and I respect that. They're not constantly approaching Congress or Washington and trying to do what Christy Nicola and then the men who were involved in the Tuskegee medical experiments did as victims, looking for compensation and looking for validation. They have their own reasons for not doing that, but what they are doing in the public eye is selling books and selling seminars and exercises and all of these things. And so that has to be approached delicately. So I felt when I interviewed them, I wanted to give them as much credibility as I could. My goal wasn't to make them look bad, as a lot of television does with people. I mean, you had the conspiracy theory show with Jesse Ventura, which in my opinion became a joke.
I agree. I agree with you. I've had Jesse on this show a couple times, and the truth of the matter is he was scheduled to come on again on the show and sent me the book, and he sent me his publicist sent me a bunch of questions to ask. And I wrote back and I says, well, I'll look over the questions, but as you know, I like to ask my own questions. I don't do it like that. And, and I sent them some things, so, well, can you give us an idea what you're going to talk about? And so I did. And they were real questions. And boy, after that, I don't hear back from Jesse or none of them now.
Of course not. And no offense to Mr. Ventura, but that, I appreciated the show when it first came out because I think it was, as far as I could see in the major mainstream, it was the first time that something like that was being put out so widespread in the public. But then when they got to like the second season, Jesse shifted gears on us and started making fun of people. It was getting close to that Penn and Teller show where they were just baiting people to destroy them. And it doesn't work. I mean, yeah, you want to sift through all the garbage and the lies to get to the real stuff. But there was never anything, they would have a psychic on the show. And we're all psychic. We all have psychic abilities. I believe that wholeheartedly. But when you exploit that, or you have guys out there that it almost becomes like, and as much as I enjoy stuff like this, I'm a filmmaker. I love movies and I love, like pro wrestling, okay? A lot of these paranormal shows become like pro wrestling. And a lot of these guys that are out there claiming that they were part of something also become part of the drama. I mean, there was one gentleman, I won't say his name for his own sake, but it was hilarious. He was on some YouTube radio show, and he was saying that people were trying to kill him, and he was pretending like he was crying. I mean, and people ate this up.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, listen, if you're that afraid and you're going to cry about it, get out of the spotlight and you're safe. It's that simple. Right,
and guess what, folks? He's still alive. So.
He is still alive, and it was all publicity stunt, in my opinion, as it always is with a lot of these guys. It's about the entertainment.
Sure. And so my approach when I interviewed these men was to get rid of all that stuff and see them as human beings. So I started, like in regard to Stuart Swerdlow, I wanted to talk about his childhood because that's where it started for him. And I wanted to know how school was. So I asked him about his life in school, his life at home, normal stuff. I wanted to know about normal stuff. Because if we know about the normal stuff, it'll help us understand the abnormal a bit more. And that was really my approach in asking the questions. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I think that I'm just using logic, and I'm just trying to see what I would want to know, because I'm not happy being lied to. So I want to know, I would love to find out what really happened. That's what I want. I didn't make this film to like fit an agenda. I spent years of my life and then some. And I could have released this movie. I had a finished version of the first movie in December of 2011. I could have put that one out easy and moved on with my life. But I kept working on it. Even to this day, there were things that I've done, even in terms of the promotions and things I'm about to put out for the DVD and Blu-ray, because we really are shipping them soon. The reason why this whole thing took longer was me. I'm a pain in the butt. I just wanted this thing to be the best thing it could be for the people who are to receive it. So it's my only answer because it's the truth. And that's what I want, and that's what I want from now on. I think from now on, though, this was about building a foundation. Making this Montauk Chronicles movie was learning, like interviewing the men. I know what technique I want to use next time, and how I want to put things together, and how I know much more than what I knew when I started these two movies. So this was all about building a foundation. So I'm never going to have to take as long as I did, or I'm never going to have to do those things again because I learned. And because I know that I'm going to be doing stuff like this for the rest of my life. So I want to be good at it, and I want to get the best information possible. So I talked to these men in the same fashion you and I are speaking right now, because I think as you know, when you're interviewing someone, they're a mirror of your atmosphere and of your attitude. So if you're trying to make them feel uncomfortable and putting on a superiority complex with them, or trying to load them up with information to impress the audience, they're going to clam up and they're not going to give you much. But if you make them feel comfortable, and if you're honest with them, they're probably going to be honest with you. They're going to mirror your energy. And so that was my approach with the interviews.
Right, right. And, going back to some of the more mainstream stuff, what I did like about conspiracy theorists, and then I'll leave that on the curb. What I did like is it at least brought some attention to these subjects. However, I think it made a circus out of them later on, like you said. And the one that did it for me, that turned me around, I said, all right, that's enough of this, is when he went after David Icke. And not because he went after David Icke, but what did it was Alex Jones just weeks before had David Icke on his show, and in the beginning of the show he said, he's one of my favorite guests, and he's going on and on about how great he is, and then he tells Jesse to go after him on conspiracy theory, and so Jesse does, and then I think a week later David Icke's back on Alex Jones' show, and I'm thinking, well, do these guys not like each other, or is it all just an act? So and for me, the entertainment's over. I've been entertained long enough. I'm in this because I want the truth. That's why I have guys like you on my show, because I want to pick your brain. I want to find out what you know, because I want to put my own pieces to the puzzle together. I just want to know what's really going on. And, our life is just a blink of an eye on this planet. So, and it's my mission to just find out the truth. Now, I have no doubt that there's been mind control programs and that these things are still going on. I do believe that they have figured out how to time travel. I do believe that these things happen. I just don't believe everybody who comes to me and says that they've been a part of it. And I don't ask people, for proof because I have this power trip, but I ask people for proof because, if you don't have the cojones to get out there with the evidence, give it to me. I will.
It's true.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to understand. And the gentlemen that you were just mentioning are all making money in one way or another. And I have two words, like I mentioned before, pro wrestling. That show, Conspiracy Theory, was pro wrestling. If anybody knows anything about how a show or a movie comes together, it's thought about before you shoot it, it's thought about in the editing, and it's thought about while you're shooting it, and it's directed. Okay, so don't think those reality shows that you're watching are not set up. And no offense, because they have to be in a way, but, because they have to make their schedules and they have to put food on the table. It's your job to either tune it out or demand for something better, or recognize that what you're watching is a fabrication or it's set up. So, these guys, a lot of the time, are told what to say. They want their paycheck at the end of the day. In my case, I'm a total guerrilla warrior, man. I'm just out, moving from location to location. I am looking for the truth like you are. And, I need to put food on the table too, but I'd rather do it in a way that gives something to the people that are paying me for the movie that I make or something that I write or something that I'm part of. I want to give them something real. And honestly, it doesn't take that much more of an effort. It's just about a decision as to how you're going to approach it. It might take a little more work, but I have no truck for anyone that, that's just going to sit and lie and, make up stories about how someone's trying to kill them. I mean, come on now.
Oh, I know. And, I've had guys in the past, I won't mention no names. I'll just call him Webhead. I had a guy who used to come on. Every time he turned around, he'd go as far as getting on YouTube videos and putting neck braces on his neck and saying, oh, they ran me off the road. But then you look into the guy's background, you find out that he's had DWIs. And I'm thinking, if you really hurt your neck and you really banged up your car, nobody ran you off the road. Your beer can ran you off the road. And it's like, but they do these things. And it so discredits the whole thing. And that's why I bring it up. It's not because I want to go badger people or bash anybody. I just, I'm in this thing. I'm in it to win it. I want the truth. And when somebody else comes and pretends that they're in it for the same reason, but they're making a total mockery of it, that'd be like me, I guess, going and telling the president how to do his job. I don't think he'd like that very much. And even though I'd do it, and a doctor too, you go in the doctor's office and he said, well, run some tests. And you tell him, well, doc, I know what's wrong with me. They don't like that because.
But see, you're right about that, because the thing is, not enough of us are getting up and stopping. See, the people who run this country, we constantly see those people we voted into office. And the thing is, as you know, a lot of those guys are really corrupt. One guy's smoking crack, one guy's raping children, the other, I mean, who are we voting in here? And who's running the situation? So they're very well capable of those bringing kids to Montauk and killing them for science because they don't care. Life is cheap unless it's theirs. So, you know, and even there, in a lot of cases, it's just about money for these people. So I'd say, you know, so the only way we're going to start some kind of revolution is to be intelligent. Because again, it's either a violent revolution or we get smart. And the way to get smart is to take your time, absorb the information, ask a lot of questions. Don't take their answers and just say, yeah, you're right. And without challenge the guy. If he's going to tell you that he worked with aliens, you have to ask him thousands of questions over a year. Don't just take his word for it, you know, unless there's something really compelling in the story, like in the case of Travis Walton, where there were several men. They had no reason to sit and just make this stuff up, and they all checked out on the lie detector, and they're consistently telling the story, and their demeanor doesn't change. And he's like a serious guy, probably feels a little uncomfortable about doing this stuff sometimes, but in recent years he's been doing it a lot. And it's like, you know, look at guys like that. Watch them. Ask them some questions. If they have a problem with you asking questions, something's up, you know?
Oh, yeah, and I've dealt with those types, too, who, you know, like I've had some who've come on the show, told me some pretty wild stories, and then later they'll keep contacting me about it, and I let them know. It's like, well, you know, if you're going to keep going with it, then, you know, where's the proof? And they get offended that I've asked them for proof, and, you know, there's not proof of everything. You'll find out, blah, 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 and it's, you know, you want a good example. I mean, look at Planet X. And I'm not saying that there's not something out there. However, everybody pretty much rolls off what the first guy said. It's like, you know, they all think they're experts. They've looked at Zachariah Stitchin's work, or they've looked at somebody else's work, and then they add in a few things, and they think, you know, well, this is it. You're stupid if you don't believe me. And it's like, well,
right, and there are plenty of those people who have read like every piece of literature that was put out to, you know, make money about the Montauk Project. And one guy was saying, well, the aliens don't have 5 fingers like they do in your movie. Well, you know what? The day you show me a picture of the alien that was down at Montauk and Camp Hero, I will go back and reshoot that scene according to your picture. Until you can produce a picture for me, shut up.
That's exactly right. Now, one of the listeners asked how such radical experiences can be hidden beneath a town. They say that it was so close to the largest city in the world. And I guess when you look at, I mean, they've hidden some big things through the time. And
well, it's 4 hours east of New York City, number one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at least 3.5 hours east. And it's in the middle of nowhere, really. I mean, Montauk is kind of an isolated town. So I'm just getting down to the reality of the geography. And how things can be concealed, we have evidence that, at the very least, for years, Camp Hero, or Fort Hero, as we have it on document, was concealed from the people in town. And there wasn't a huge population from Montauk. It only recently started growing, or in the, you know, the last 30 years or so. I mean, before that, there was really nobody there. So what better place to hide stuff? And with all due respect, I mean, there are things being hidden from us all the time. I mean, think about it. You know, there are bases all around not only this country, but around the world that many things are being hidden from us. I mean, think about what goes on in your neighbor's house. You don't exactly know. You never know. And then you hear it on the news that this guy killed his whole family with a baseball bat. Something led up to that, but you never saw what was going inside that house. So imagine, if you will, a facility created by billions of dollars. Of course they can conceal it from us, of course. But they want you to feel like that would be very hard to do, and it's not. I mean, you know, if someone had a work shed in their backyard that was 100 feet away from your house, you might not know what's happening in that shed until it's on the 11 o'clock news. So it's just a fact of life.
That's right. I mean, a lot of times people don't know there's a meth lab in their neighborhood until it blows up. So
right. So right, and then it's and again, you know, and I understand like this, a question like this, because that's how I felt in the beginning. But then you start to realize, wait a second, it really is kind of easy to conceal stuff. And then if it's easy for just a regular civilian, to conceal something from you 100 feet away from where you sleep, then imagine, if you will, 50 miles away from where you're dwelling, or 3 hours or whatever from New York City east in an isolated town on a hill where nobody goes and it's guarded. Anything can happen there. Anything.
Yeah, that's true. Now the military focused the efforts on this Montauk project, where there was it mind control primarily, or was there a well balance? With these men who you spoke with, did they tell you? What about the time travel type of stuff?
It was all intertwined. So, they say that at the time, this Montauk chair, as it's called, was designed, and again, it's kind of convoluted. So, again, and this is a story that's been told, and you can cross-check it. But they say the Montauk chair was designed so a powerful psychic could sit in the chair, because this is a person that can focus enough on something that could be manifested through this chair into physical reality. So, in other words, a man who's sitting in that chair can think of an object and bring that object through the background ether, as Preston Nichols says, and materialize through thought, okay? So this chair also was designed in accordance with the mind control program, and I'm just repeating what I was told, with the children, that eventually was being used for dual purposes, that the mind control program experimented on these children through brutal physical trauma that would break down psychically and break down the children psychologically, and then mind control could be implemented, a triggering device could be implemented, and that they could be later used as assassins or spies, and that if that worked, then eventually the idea was they were going to use the same methods on the mass population. And so this is where Preston Nichols claims that he got together with Alfred Bionic and Duncan Cameron and decided, well, they just can't let that happen. So, of course, they tried to crash the project. And the way they did this was they used the Montauk chair to manifest a creature. And again, folks, welcome to science fiction. Manifest a monster, a giant Sasquatch called Junior, that went around the base and destroyed everything and scared everybody. An energy that was just running around and destroying computers and chasing people and blowing things up. And what happened was they said that this ended the project. Now, this is the part that I have trouble with believing. If these men were actually there, this is the thing I think was fabricated, this story, because it just sounds like an old serial. It sounds like an old science fiction story. There's really not much to it. It sounds really silly, actually.
Right.
Of course it does.
And we have a call here, so I want to take it so that we don't get any background noise here. 631 area code. You are on Late Night in the Midlands. First name, where you're calling from?
Eddie. I'm calling from Quag, New York.
Well, hello, Eddie.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, it is like the gentleman was just speaking about how, it's kind of like, a science, fiction thing. However, I've actually had some, I've had some experiences myself.
Where did you have these experiences, Eddie?
Well, I had went to school on in pre-K. I had went on Air Base in the Hamptons.
What, a field trip?
Well, yeah, it were field trips, but I remember them coming in and, using the Carl Renard cards on me and, testing my mind. And, for a long time they had.
But
me
what was
medicated.
Eddie? I don't mean to cut you off, but now you said you remember them testing you. What were the details in between? You were in school. You said you were in pre-K, but do you have any memory of how it began? How did an adult approach you? What were the words that he said to you first? Let's go into this room. What did he say?
He said to me, "Let's go into this room. I need to talk to you." And I just recently started getting my memories back. It was weird, actually. I was on the internet and I was, skimming through the web, and when I seen the movie come out, trailers to the Montauk Chronicles, it was like I was geared to it for some reason. It was like I out of nowhere, I've never really had an obsession with UFOs or mind control or these time travel. I never had any, like obsession but I got highly into it. I started going through stuff, and I went to the base over the summer, and I was with a friend of mine, and he looked over to me when we got in there, and he said, "Dude, I've been here, and I don't remember how I was here, but I know I was here, and when I was here, things, were not so."
Well, Eddie, let me ask you a question before we move on here, and I'm sure Michael wants to move on. This has been a subject I've been studying for years. You have a story. You're telling me a story, and I've heard a lot of stories, man. What is the most convincing, compelling thing you can tell me and tell the people listening to you right now to believe you? What can you give me?
That's it. That's exactly the thing. Nobody believes, so a lot of people they want to debunk it.
But Christy Nicola in 1995 had names, had locations, had times, dates, information over and over and over. I mean, she had a lot of details, and that's why Congress got scared.
Right.
And you have to be able to produce that stuff, unfortunately.
Right, exactly. But I do remember class trips. They would take us close to the lighthouse, and they would, there was trails. I can
But
show
this was
you
told
these
to me by James Bruce, who I interviewed for the film, who was in his 40s, by the way. Some people have the misconception that he was 30 years old. He's in his mid-40s. How old are you, Eddie?
Me, I'm almost 30 years old. So.
Okay. Well, what I suggest to you is go approach Congress, man. Get your story clear and sharp. Get every detail down. Every detail, because they're going to want details, otherwise they're going to think you're a crackpot. And you got to go approach them, because me telling your story is just repeating it over and over and over again. And I want to, if I were to talk to you and tell your story, I would want to see you approaching Congress. I want to see you go to Washington. Yeah, and people are going to say, "Oh, they're never going to tell you everything." They're not going to tell us everything, but they might admit it a little bit. And if they admit it a little bit, it's a huge victory for us.
Right, exactly. Huge.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else, Eddie. You get as many facts together as you can about this experience, and I'd be certainly open to talking to you as well. If maybe some night you want to share more of that with us, that'd be great. Because I believe that these things really happen. And I won't call anybody a liar, because I know that these things happen. But having proof, I understand what Christopher's talking about. With proof, you can say, "Oh yeah, well, you have no choice but to believe it. Here it is." This is right. Certain things. But I would be very open to hearing you out some night if you're interested.
Definitely.
All right. Anything else?
That's about it. I guess you guys got to keep going. So.
Yeah. Christopher, is there anything else you wanted to ask him? I mean, you're welcome to.
No, just Godspeed, man. And if you really believe in what you're saying, and you're not, this isn't a put on, and you're not just trying to get attention, then make it so, man. Don't just do it. Because what's going to happen is, and I don't mean to say you're lying, but if you are, it's going to come out. So you're wasting your time. If it really happened, if you really believe this happened, do something about it.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
And that's it.
Well, thank you so much for the call, Ed. And again, get a hold of me. My email is mv@latenightinthemidlands.com. And
you got it.
All right. Thank you very much for the call.
Take care.
All right.
You too. Night.
Good night. And yeah, I definitely would never want people to be afraid to tell their stories. It's like this information has to get out there, but you're right. You got to take that extra leap. It goes even further than just talking on a radio show. It's letting them know that and that you're going to tell everybody you can. So,
well, as you know, Michael, there's a lot of people out there that when some new conspiracy or new paranormal happening becomes popular, they may even convince themselves that it happened and may have never happened. And that's another thing that I'm not saying that's what Eddie is doing, but I'm saying that kind of thing does occur, and you have to be really sharp with that stuff. Now, I found a way to talk to Eddie in a respectful manner, but being very direct with him. Like, don't waste your time and everyone else's. Just make sure that you're ready to say something. If you really want to spend your time and your short life, just like everybody else, we're here briefly. If that's what you want to do, make sure it's worth every moment. If you're going to go out there and tell this story, you better say something important.
That's right. Now, let me ask you this, because somebody had said that they thought that the chair part of the story was a separate story, but did they actually kidnap these young males? Did they first off, did they look for some who had psychic ability? And if so, how the heck did they know? And was it exclusively those who had psychic sensitivity? And was it true that they were actually put in a chair and energy was run through this chair? And how did that work?
Well, number one, I can tell you what I was told, so I can't tell you exactly how it was because I don't know. Okay. But I can tell you what I believe. And what I believe was that children were taken that were runaways in orphanages, that were foster children, like Stuart Swerdlow said, that were so-called expendables and undesirables, and that wouldn't be missed. And so, of course, what a great way. I mean, in the 70s, there was no internet. Kids were disappearing left and right. Parents were just thinking, oh, some guy in a white van just came by and took the kid. Or a runaway kid is a runaway kid. You're just safely assuming he's on the streets of New York, selling his body or worse, or dead somewhere. So it was like easy pickings. If it's a program like this, they could just take these kids. There's another place in Florida. There's another story that I have my eyes on, and I've seen other people investigating this more and more in the recent months. It was the Dozer School. It was an orphanage. Now we have Corpus Delicti. They have a number of bodies that were discovered under the ground of murdered, beaten, and abused orphans that were killed. And this is around that time, and what a perfect place for a program like this to, traumatize kids and take them out. So there could be some connection to this. I mean, it just doesn't make sense that some one lone crazy guy was murdering and killing all these kids. It seems like an organized program, like cattle,
Yeah.
So I can't say that they were particularly looking for anyone with psychic abilities, because I'm a firm believer that we all have psychic abilities that could be developed, and we don't have any programs in our elementary schools to develop that ability, so it's really kind of up to us. And most of us, I would say 99% of us, don't even bother to ever try. Well, and how would you know?
And you know what I wonder now, hearing this, now you've heard of the surges of what they're saying are just children that have been bursting over our borders. And I'm thinking, here you've got a bunch of children who nobody could really account for except for those who might round them up or what have you. And I wonder how many of these kids wind up in projects like this. And you got to think that these projects are still going. And now with the internet, it's probably a lot easier for them to monitor and see who does, because people announce it. Hey, I had this dream or that dream, or I'm psychic, or I'm, and they give their whole life online. So what a tool now to use and say, all right, well, he's a good candidate. Let's go kidnap him.
Right, and there's only so many chimpanzees you can experiment on until you say we need a human subject. And so they could say, okay, well, we need homeless volunteers, like they did in the Tuskegee experiments. They lied to these men and said, hey, you're volunteering for free medical advice and medication. And what they did was sick stuff, brutal, sick stuff. They implanted syphilis into these men, unbeknownst to them, and over a number of years monitored them to see what the disease was doing to them. This is criminal stuff. And this was done by our government to our people. And so it's the same, it's not us. We're Americans, man. We should take our country back because there's some real villains that are running it. That's the way I feel. And if children were taken, the reason why I keep avoiding most of the supernatural stuff is because I feel there was a huge crime committed here. And maybe a lot of the supernatural or paranormal did occur throughout all that, but they want us to keep our eyes on that stuff because then it dismisses everything. Well, and maybe I'm really putting myself in danger by saying this, because the most dangerous thing to them, remember, is that if we're intelligent and that we're clear-headed about this, that's the most dangerous thing.
Oh, yeah. The most dangerous people to the establishment are those who can see. I often reference this movie Roddy Piper was in, if you remember.
It's one of the greatest movies ever made. They live, man.
Yeah, they live. And I mean, and that's basically it. If you're like you or like me, and even we can't see it all, but, we see. We know what's going on behind the scenes. We know enough to know that it's worth looking into deeper. And they don't like that. And so I think those are the people who really threaten them. I mean, somebody could get on the internet and go on YouTube and talk for days about all this stuff. But when they show that they've really got something, or they're really smart and they know what they're looking for, then that becomes troublesome to the establishment. Whoever that establishment might be. I think there's, these alphabet agencies. I understand that the FBI even had a station on in Montauk. Is that true, or in Long Island?
That is true. Again, Paul Fagan, my company researcher, great guy, he discovered that. And there's one tall building when you go to the center of town, in the town of Montauk. Very small town, by the way. You go to the center of town, there's a traffic circle. And as you're driving through the traffic circle, there's just the tallest building in town. And it's a little, I think it's condos now, but for years we never knew what was going on in there. And there is evidence that it was an FBI office.
Oh, wow. And I shouldn't even say wow, because I'm not surprised. Usually these organizations, the FBI and the CIA are usually involved in a lot of these things in some manner.
Sure, there's an Air Force base out there. I mean, it's not in operation anymore as far as we know, but
right,
the Air Force was there.
Now, their efforts really allowed them to manipulate reality. In other words, they had become masters, not just of physical space, but also of time, if they were really able to do the things that said that they were able to do. How might that be affecting the reality that, well, at least what we think to be reality now? I mean, how much, if they could go back, say, 40 years in the past, or doing these things that are said that they've done, what might they have changed for us now? I mean, how much of a lie, and not just because of information being held, but just things that they said, that didn't work out right, let's go back and change that. I mean, how much of that, might be going on? And I know it'd probably be speculation.
Alfred told me that the time travel operations changed the outcome of World War II. He said the Nazis actually won the war. They went back and changed it. The Civil War, the South won. They went back and changed it. I mean, what do you say to this? Oh, yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah, that's true. So now the Bigfoot creature, I found that interesting. Apparently, there was a powerful Sasquatch-like creature, and it started destroyed things, and you know it was. I don't know the full story on that, to be honest with you, but if it said that they were able to create this Sasquatch type creature, is that to say that now, if that's true, can we, assume that maybe Sasquatch is a military created type creature, because people claim.
I don't know. I mean, it's in ancient Native American folklore.
Yeah.
Teddy Roosevelt said he saw one. So I don't. I don't disbelieve that there's a technology that can mimic a thought, and I can guarantee you, if we can even imagine a technology eventually, or even now, or it may have been already invented, and I believe that. The thing is, even though all of this stuff is possible, we shouldn't just believe it because they said it.
That's
What I try to do is I break it down. Like in regard to the men saying that there was a Sasquatch, in one instance, Preston specifically, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Forbidden Planet, great science fiction film, classic sci-fi movie with Leslie Nielsen actually is in it. But, great movie. But there's this monster from the id, and, Preston and obviously everybody else involved were huge sci-fi fans, and Preston said that Duncan thought of the monster from the id, specifically from Forbidden Planet. And so the monster from the id wasn't exactly a Sasquatch. It was like this energy creature that was running around attacking people and scaring people. So that's what he said happened. But every time I hear this story, it just sounds like a bunch of guys sharing a pizza and a keg of beer saying, what should we say next? And I'm sorry. There's just something about it that's not right, because at the core of it, because in the initial book, there wasn't much about the murders, that came out later on. So it seems like the initial story was supposed to be this, light science fiction adventure. And I've always found that to be silly. And that was my reasoning for not being interested. And even though I portrayed the reenactments, or whatever you want to call them, the interpretations of the stories in a hyper-realistic manner, it's because they are. But then I also have a surreal style to my film work, and I wanted to focus on the board programming and on the massive amounts of drugs that were given in situations like this to break down the personality and fracture the mind of these children. And so that was my focus. And I don't mean to sound like I'm deviating from an answer. That's my answer. I can't sit and confirm these things, and I won't. When someone asks me, hey, did this happen? I'm going to tell you, no, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. I have no proof of it. I can repeat what these guys said. That's what I could do. I could tell you what they told me. And I've been telling you, but the stories are very thin when it comes to the Sasquatch and it comes to the aliens. It's like a one-note or a two-note explanation. But when we get down to the boys, that's where the details are, and that's why I stuck to that part of the story.
That's right. You have nothing to be sorry for. I for one, appreciate the way you handle these things. It's because it's the way it should be handled. There's a lot of things that happen where people can't prove, but it doesn't hurt to ask for it, because you ask, you just might get it. And if you get it, well, then you've got a lot more to hang your hat on. So,
sure.
Yeah. And I think that's important. So I like the way you do it. There's too many out there who just take anything anybody tells them. They say, hey, I just went to the ET ship last night. They told me that Jupiter's going to be moved over and it's colliding Earth. And there's people who will go and run to the hills because they believe it, and they've never even looked into any of it. So,
sure.
What was it like walking around the base, being on the base? I assume that you were actually on the base, and I mean, what did it feel like there? Did you get the feeling of evil? And I understand that was lots of bodies that were discovered under a school or something like that, or a church. Did that have anything to do with this?
Well, bodies were discovered. The mention that at least what I was referring to was the Dozer School in Florida. There were bodies that were discovered. In terms of Montauk, they have not found. There is no corpus delicti. If there was, we would be talking about that intensively right now. Not only would we be talking about it, everybody would be confirming it. So we don't have a body yet, and we might eventually. It might end up like the Dozer School, where we're kind of sifting past the legends a little bit, like the monsters and the alien. And here, I just want to make clear one more time. I understand that we have evidence that there are other dimensions. I'm a firm believer that there is something that goes on after our bodies discorporate. Like, I believe there is some life or some existence after so-called death. I believe in extraterrestrial intelligence. But again, I am proceeding with caution, 100%. I will not confirm it just because someone's telling me. So I can tell you what I believe, and I can tell you why. Because there are a lot of things to support it, real solid things, but not at Montauk at the moment. What I feel strongly regarding Montauk is this program and this mind control thing, and that I feel that even though a lot of this might be true technologically and in existence, that there certainly are extraterrestrial intelligent beings and probably have worked with our government in some capacity, or at least our government found crash-landed ships in the past and reversed the technology, that I feel that this was a mind control program at its core, and there was probably other things played with out there too, but if we focus on that, we might find the other stuff. We might find evidence that there were these technologies there. My goal is to ask Preston Nichols to demonstrate something, some kind of technology that he can demonstrate for us that's compelling evidence that there were these technologies down there, that there was something extraordinary that occurred beneath Camp Hero between 1971 and 1983. And that if he has this knowledge, and he is at this level of genius, or technological genius, then he should be able to replicate something for us. And so I want to ask him, when I go to see him next, if we could begin something. I'll do my best, and he might say, well, we need millions and millions and billions of dollars to do this. Well, I don't know about that, because he always suggests that he has the stuff there. So if you have the stuff there, let's fire it up and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And if nothing else, maybe remembering where some of this technology may be hidden under the ground.
Sure.
Now, is there actual openings that look like they go down into the ground, but there's concrete over them?
For certain.
There is.
100% certain. There's also an elevator shaft that goes down. You see it in my film on the base exploration. And there's also an extended base exploration on the Blu-ray and DVD where you see a little bit more. There are all these entrances, these wells that go down with ladders, and then a lot of them are cemented closed. They were closed off. For what reason, I can't tell you 100%, but I can almost guarantee that there's something underneath there, whether it just be a tunnel system for moving equipment around or what. There's got to be something. I mean, this is an Air Force base. They're not going to show you everything topside. There's something underneath there. Does it go down as many levels as the legends say it does? I can't say, and I won't. But
and I assume that you're trespassing if you try to go in there and check any of it out.
I was trespassing. I trespassed throughout the entire movie. Yes. Well, no. The thing is, Camp Hero here. You don't have to trespass. You can go there and observe the tower from a distance. You can walk around the grounds. You can look at some of the structures. You can come very close to them legally. Illegally, enter the tower. If you want to go into the tower, that's illegal, and enter at your own risk.
I see. But what about going back where these concrete barriers are over what could be entrances? So what? I
mean, you'd have to get some heavy metal equipment to get in there. I mean, a lot of these things are sealed or welded shut, so you're going to have to show up with some stuff, and I would say that's a felony. I mean, you're gonna get arrested.
Well, what about like you hear about like I've got a guy who's been on this show several times. They have a ship and they use this sonar type radar that scans the bottom of the ocean floor to tell them what's down there. Why couldn't something like that be used from even above, and maybe see if there's any caverns or anything below?
I think there could be. The thing is this. I think if there was that advanced level of technology down there, there also has to be an advanced level of cloaking or blocking this kind of silly little sonar or radar that we might use. Now, I was actually in a boat, and this footage there was just so much of it that I couldn't fit it into a 2-hour movie. The movie would have ended up being 5 hours long.
I'm okay
but I
with
actually
that.
went on a boat with a man who did exactly what you said, and he was finding dark areas. There was a submarine base there, by the way. So there's a lot attached to that. It's an Air Force base. We know that. You can confirm that tonight, today, yesterday. We know it was an Air Force base, and the Air Force had all sorts of toys. So there was submarines out there. There was a submarine entrance to Camp Hero. And so maybe what he was seeing on the sonar when he was showing me, and you do see a little bit of this footage on the discs, is that there's just dark areas, but you can't, once again, you can't confirm what those dark areas are. It could just be a drop. It could just be a simple drop in the geography. And so, but one story that this fisherman told, and he wanted his identity concealed because he just didn't want to be associated with it, but he felt very compelled to tell me this story, that they were out shark fishing, him and his group, and they do commercial charters, and I think maybe that's the reason. He didn't want to scare anybody off that just wanted to fish. So he said it was late night, it was a clear night, you'll hear the story, and a ship came, or some kind of vehicle, rose out of the water and hovered above his boat for a little while and then took off into the sky. And this was right offshore, off of Montauk Point, where Camp Hero is located.
That's absolutely fascinating. This is something that, anybody, like if I was a millionaire and, you've got this extra money laying around, why not, put together a team and try to look into this deeper? Why not, like even you go back to your conspiracy theorists, if it's real, well, come on, get there, let's see what's in there, find a way. And I guess going through Congress, I don't think we're ever going to get anywhere as far as finding out the secrets, because they're going to always want to keep those concealed, because by saying, yeah, there's underground cabins, well, now there could be truth to these other things, and then they might have to actually admit that they were kidnapping young men and murdering them. I mean, that's just like telling us that we're not alone right now. They're not going to do that, because then they'd have to admit they've been lying the last 60 years.
I think as much as entertainment as my movie may be, or as our shows or our discussions might be, right now, because we're having an intelligent discussion about the subject matter, this is putting a pressure out there that they may have not expected. And that, if I don't think they're ever going to admit to that, but let's say somebody tried to pull a Bill Clinton like he did in 1995 and say, well, they did it, but it wasn't us, it was them. It's like, that should change everything. And we should be able to change everything after that, because if they could do it in the 60s, if they could do it in 1971, and if they could do it in 1983, trust me, they're doing it now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I have news for them. If they don't want this getting out, it's also going to be broadcast on the Dark Matter Radio Network, which is a network that Art Bell will be doing his show on. It's also on K98 Talk, which covers a whole lot of area. And it's on High Points Radio, the top of New Jersey. And they do cover New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So we're getting the message out here tonight, and I'm enjoying this conversation. We do have to take one more break, and then you and I will come back and finish up. We'll have time to get into some more of this. I tell you, I've really enjoyed talking with you, and I'm glad it's not over yet. So hang on with us.
Same to you, my friend.
Well, thank you. Folks, we're talking about Montauk Chronicles. That would be the Montauk Project. And, really interesting. Here's a guy that's done his homework. He's asking the right questions, and he's not a go along to get along guy. And I like that. His name is Christopher Garantano. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Garitano.
Garitano, all right. And he's, I'm surprised because I'm notorious for screwing up last names. But folks, Late Night in the Midlands, we'll be back in just a few moments. Don't go anywhere. And if you want to get in on the conversation, it's 803-317-2264. You can also call in using Skype. We'll be right back.
Radio has joined with the Hardened Structures team to provide state-of-the-art survival shelter design and build services at LNM Radio exclusive rates. Hardened Structures, with over 21 years experience in military, commercial, and private shelter design build services, are also offering LNM Radio listeners a free consultation, normally a $500 value. So click on the Hardened Structures banner on the home page or the chat and listen page and have peace of mind that no matter what happens, your family is protected.
The LNM Radio Network and Late Night in the Midlands depends on you, the listener. Without you, there would be no us. So help us continue to bring you the best guests with the best information and subscribe today. Information on becoming an LNM subscriber can be found at the top of LateNightInTheMidlands.com. Just click the About Subscriptions tab and become part of the family while helping the truth stay alive. And while you're at it, maybe subscriptions aren't for you. A one-time donation helps as well. Click that donate button on the right side of LateNightInTheMidlands.com and help us help you. You want the truth? Late Night in the Midlands knows you deserve it. That's why we make it easy for you to listen at www.LateNightInTheMidlands.com. Go on over, become a member, be informed, and by all means, inform others. Folks, we're not your average radio show. We cover everything. Late Night in the Midlands on the LNM Radio Network. LNM is always looking for sponsors, so if you are interested in sponsorship or advertisement, on air or on our website, contact us at mv@latenightinthemidlands.com. If you're interested in rebroadcasting or picking up the live feed for Late Night in the Midlands, then contact us at mv@latenightinthemidlands.com and help us help you.
And as we have been programmed mentally, intellectually, one must be aware of this being programmed like a computer.
Programming that we are constantly assaulted by throughout our life conditions us. It programs us to a particular worldview.
The project is literally the secularization of the world. New secular or worldly order.
A new study says the news media have been pushing a gospel of godlessness on the American public.
Because this media is here and designed to make sure that they ask no critical questions. To make sure that the only thing that they are concerned about is having a good time. The only thing they're concerned about is filling their bellies. The only thing they're concerned about is acquiring more and more material things. And so that is why today, one of the struggles that you have as young people, that when you want to do different events and you want to talk about real issues, You have the struggle of many of your peers who've been so conditioned in this matrix that they would rather party than listen to the truth. They would rather party and shop and go to the mall than to stand up for issues of justice. They're stuck in the matrix. They're stuck in the matrix. But you have the responsibility of helping to wake them up, of helping to wake them up, of helping to wake them up.
Now, how do we know that there's a God?
After having been thoroughly brainwashed.
And how do we know that there's a creator? How do we know that there's a creator?
I made love to an alien near Roswell last night. We strolled along together in the pale moonlight. I had a funny feeling that something wasn't right. I made love to an alien last night. When she gripped my hand, I was feeling mighty fine. But her fingers with mine would not intertwine. I bent down and gazed into her eyes. They were big as donuts and blacker than the sky. She said, I'm feeling lonely. I said, Lord, so am I. We'll stroll along together, but we won't question why. That ground beneath your feet here is flashing red and white, and sprouting little mushrooms left and right. Then she threw me down and put me on my back. To tell the truth, I thought I'd seen my last. But she settled down and snuggled in my arms, and I made love to that maiden from the stars.
All right, folks. You know, I love that one too, and that's why I played it again, seeing that I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist or anything, but let's just call him NSA for short, who likes to tear things off my board and try to disconnect us at every chance they get. Now, I'll tell you, if we were talking about Casper the Friendly Ghost, we wouldn't have this problem tonight. But when we get into things a little more serious, and not saying that the paranormal is not a serious business, because it is, and I love it all, but these are things that really are swept under the rug, and they're meant to be kept there. But, you know, we're troublemakers here, and we like to bring this stuff out into the open. And, you know, we like people to have that experience, that jaw-dropping experience. You know, you think that these things aren't real, and then you find out that, hey, one thing leads to another. Like for me, it was 9/11 that woke me up, and from that moment on, you know, I knew that they were lying about whether we were alone or not with ET, you know, because I've seen craft. No, I haven't seen who's driving them, but I have to assume some of this stuff came from off planet, and that's an assumption of mine. But when you look at the stars at night, you look at that wide, vast universe that we have, and we're only seeing a portion of it. There's got to be. Common sense tells you there's got to be more. So you know we're being lied to. But then when you see things like this or hear about things like this, the extent of the lie is so big that you almost, I mean, if you're not strong-minded, I mean, it could cripple you. I mean, it really can. Now, Christopher, it wasn't long after you had gotten a call from somebody, I think, was it to tell you that after 1983 that this project still existed? I mean, does it still exist?
I can't say for sure, but I can say for sure that the man in my film, who goes by the name of James Bruce, wasn't a fabricated plant or some kind of thing that I made up. There was no reason to do that because there were plenty of people ready to tell their stories. There was this guy in particular, though, who is in his 40s, by the way, because, you know, there's some disinfo out there trying to discredit this guy already, and I can't credit him or discredit him. I'm just listening to his story and presenting it to you. Basically, I'm trying to give you a point of view that I had during my investigation in this 2-hour period, which was difficult to do because it's a 10-year investigation. So, you know, but this guy is for real in terms of I had nothing to do with him until he approached me. And that's all I'm going to say about it from here on in. But he told me a tale of an extended program that went past the Montauk Project that continued in certain ways. And he said that in the early 80s, when he was a kid, or in elementary school, actually he was in high school in the early 80s, but a little bit before that, he said that it started in kindergarten, and then he was taken on field trips, and this happened throughout his entire adolescence, and throughout his teenage years into his 20s, and to now, and through his 30s. And he says that it started by in kindergarten, where they would separate kids. And I remember this when I was in kindergarten and when I was in elementary school. They would take kids out of class and say, these kids are gifted, and we're separating them from all of you. And they would remove these children and bring them into another room.
I remember stuff like that, too. I remember kids having these special classes they'd go to, and not because they weren't all there. It's because they were more there than I was.
Right. But it was strange. It was like, how do you tell? And the rest of us were just normal students. How do they know if you're gifted or not? Okay, there's an advanced intelligence. They're better at mathematics. They're quicker with things. So they took these kids out, but why? Why didn't they just let these kids achieve on an individual level? Why did they remove all of the so-called gifted kids and bring them somewhere else? That's my question. And so James claimed that he was one of those kids, that he was taken out. But here's an interesting dynamic to it, was that he also believed that a lot of the kids were chosen because they were later on in their teenage years, because they were the so-called bad kids, who were also separated sometimes, as I recall so clearly. The bad kids were taken out because they were good liars, because they were good at manipulation, and that they wanted to find kids like that as well, so that they could use within these programs for one purpose, that if they ever told the story, nobody would believe them, because the kids were getting in trouble. They were into drugs and all sorts of things, as James explained, but also because they were good at manipulating people, and it may have been, they were intelligent in their own right. So it was a good basis to start. And maybe Eddie was one of these kids. You never know.
And a lot of times when these kids are trouble in the classroom, a lot of times it's because, and this may sound crazy to people, but then again, I guess it all would to some of you. But, some of these kids, they're so intelligent, their minds are so far advanced that what's going on in the classroom is so damn boring for them that, they can't help but to act up. And I think that, they probably give certain tests, I'm thinking now, in schools and classrooms, certain tests that indicate, we would think nothing of it, but when the student takes that test, they know if they've got a live one there or not.
Sure. And what particular purpose were they looking for? Why did they separate these kids? I'd love to talk to some of the kids who were in the gifted classes in those days and ask them if they remember exactly what went down and who came into the classroom. Was the classroom ever visited by somebody who was monitoring everybody? Because what better way to groom spies from an early age, and this is according to James Bruce, they would offer the parents money. Say, your kid has something we want, we're going to give you a lot of money. We're going to deal with your child from now and groom them to be working for us. Think about it. We groom kids from an early age to be in the Olympics. Why wouldn't the government groom children from an early age to be assassins, spies, even politicians in some respect? It makes sense.
Well,
but
Christopher,
they couldn't tell us all they're doing that.
Yeah, and here's a concern of mine now. A lot of children nowadays are being told, well, they got ADHD or they got this behavioral problem or that, so let's put them on these pills. And, what I've noticed, and I don't want to get all graphical on people here, but, with a lot of these mass shootings that have happened, like with the theater shootings, the McDonald's or any Walmarts or whatever's happened, what you find is the people who have committed these crimes often are on several psychokinesis type medications. And
Sure.
so I wonder if that's what it's meant for. I wonder if that's part, their technology is advanced now. And it's like, well, we can make these people pro. We don't have to look for certain people no more. As long as we get them on these pills, we can activate anybody.
Well, that's what James Bruce was saying. He was saying, well, this overabundance, this plague, this exodus of school shootings is not just by accident. It is a result of triggering and a result of planned manipulation of the populace and trying to remove guns and from the American people and manipulating us to the point where we're fully controlled physically and mentally. I'm not confirming this. I'm just telling you that that's what's being said. Would I look into it? Of course I would. I mean, is it possible? Yeah. I mean, if you know your history, of course it's possible. A lot of people don't care to read history. They don't want to learn anything. They just want to, come home, watch American Idol, get drunk, go to sleep, go to work, get drunk, go to sleep, go to work, and over 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 again. And maybe go on vacation for 2 weeks out of the year. That's great. But I want to, if there's something going on that's preventing us from living to our full potential and doing amazing things, I want to know, because I want to stop it. And that's why you have your show, and that's why we're here.
Absolutely. And I got a question from the chat. Tom asks, he says, ask the guest about Aaron Alexis and the Navy Yard shooting. Apparently, he wrote on the butt of his gun that this is my ELF weapon. And it was written on the gun, and he asked me to ask you about it. I don't know if it makes any sense to you or not, but...
Well, I mean, just putting that together right away, I mean, obviously, I don't know of the story, but I'm definitely interested in exploring that further. Well, it's this ELF weapon. I guess it's a reference to extreme low frequency, meaning those extreme low frequency waves are used to induce mind control. And if that's what he was referring to, and we have to be able to confirm it somehow, I totally want to look into this. Maybe the gentleman who just sent this in, if you could send me an email with more information on this, I'd love to look into it. I don't know much about the story, but I'm definitely interested. Send it to montaukmovie@hotmail.com if you want to send me a link.
Oh, okay, absolutely. And he's in the chat often. So, I mean, there's a contact on your website, correct?
Oh, yeah. And it all comes to me. I mean, I'm running the whole show, so
okay,
it's not
good.
like I have a massive staff of people fielding my emails. It's me.
Well, you and me both. I'm a lot of times the one-man gang here. I mean, I get some help with some outside things, but I mean, when it comes to running the show, I like running it all myself, too, because by doing that, and I like the issues we had earlier, if there was other people involved in this broadcast, then I would be immediately yelling at them for it. But because it's just me, and I know what I'm doing here, I know that somebody's, tampering or something's going wrong. Of course, technology could be failing too. Speaking of technology, super soldiers. I have spoke with a few in my time. Might they be part of this type of project? And an ongoing part of what might be left over from a project like that. Now, again, we're going into something that I personally can't prove, and they haven't proved to me. But, some of them sound pretty convincing. Other ones sound like they're making it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Frankenstein syndrome. The government... There was a movie made by William Friedkin called The Hunted. Benicio del Toro and Tommy Lee Jones. Did you see that movie?
No, I haven't seen that one.
Well, it was about a programmed, trained killer who was trained as a special forces assassin and couldn't turn it off. So, of course, you have sweepers that come out and shut these guys down, kill them, eliminate them, because they've gone too far. And I think it's the same situation. This system, of course, isn't perfect. It's created with a ton of money. So they're hiring intelligent people to design these things like the mind control fracturing and all that stuff. And they have these, almost like childish ideas like, let's get a whole bunch of young kids and make them into incredible killers and incredible spies. And let's get some really intelligent people to figure out how to do that. Let's just pay them. We have all the money we need. Just pay them. And that's, I think, basically what happened. But how do you deal with the waste, the toxic waste that comes with something like that? The residuals, the men that are still left over. And again, you probably get some jokers out there that just want attention. They don't even know why the hell they want it. They just want it. I guess it gives them something to do. But then a guy who is a leftover super soldier that's just walking around, he is not... I cannot believe for a second that this guy is calm. He's a killer. Watch that, like that movie, The Hunted, and I say these movies are out there, they're well thought out because they're somewhat derived from reality. Even, First Blood, stuff like that. These guys are trained to kill. They go out and kill, and they do it over and over and over again without emotion. They get into situations that they can't even bring any emotion into, and then they're set out into the world in some respects. I don't think the guy's just going to be calm and happy. He can't shut this thing off or whatever.
And there's triggers. There's triggers for some of these people. I mean, I've seen demonstrations on video, no less, but I've seen demonstrations where, they'll put you through this hypnosis or what have you, and then everything's fine. You go home, you forget about it all. You don't even realize what happened. And then they call you on the cell phone. They say a certain word, and that word triggers it, and they're off on their mission. And then that cell phone rings again. They say the word again, and they snap back out of it. And it's like, I don't remember. What did I do? Are you kidding me? I did this? It's like, yeah, you did.
Sure. Hey, John Frankenheimer made a movie in, the 50s called Manchurian Candidate. And then it was remade again by Jonathan Demme with Denzel Washington and Liev Schreiber in recent years. So it was like, it's the same concept, man. And, that concept has been out there for a while. And, you can ask yourself a question, was this movie put out there just in case one of these super soldiers come out and try and tell their story? Well, of course, the first thing you're going to say is, well, you just saw a Manchurian Candidate. It's a movie.
That's true. That's very true. That happens, and you say, "Oh yeah, that movie just came out." Now everybody thinks that they're part of it, when in reality, some of them might be. And we do have another call. We've got Ira on the line. Ira, welcome aboard.
Hello, guys. Great conversation tonight, and unfortunately, I've only caught about half of it so far. I was asleep.
Oh, I've loved it. But what's on your mind?
Well, I was wondering, did you guys ever speak about the actual name of the project, like one of the alternate names of it being Phoenix 2?
Phoenix Project, yeah. Oh, this was told to me by Alfred Bielek, and both Alfred Bielek and Preston Nichols. Now, I do have some information that we might have some documents to prove that there was a project called the Phoenix Project. This was described as a derivative of the Nazi scientists that were required. After the Nuremberg trials, they evaded the trials. We know that we acquired Nazi scientists for various purposes, of course, right? But then they said that Congress would have nothing to do with them anymore eventually. They were working at Brookhaven Labs in New York. And then they said, after Congress said they can't work here anymore, they went over to Montauk. And they say that the Nazi scientists brought all their stuff and all their ideas and all their Nazi fun over to Camp Hero. And that's what was told to me by both Preston and Al. And there's some of that in the movie as well. But again, we have almost nothing to prove it right now, and I'm working on something that maybe we have more documentation of it. So,
understandable. Yeah, I kind of thought that as far as the name Phoenix is concerned, I wonder if it's related to the idea of the breaking the personalities down, rebirthing them into the new personalities, and so on and so forth. And this was kind of the name they gave it as the one of the triggers for it, I guess you could say.
Could be. The Phoenix itself, the idea of it is far too beautiful in comparison to what apparently happened.
Oh, absolutely.
But, it's such an evil. It's pure evil, man. Whatever that is, whatever evil is, if the Montauk Project happened in the way I think it did, there you go. That's what it is.
I'm in total agreement with you guys. Okay, I'll let you guys go. I just wanted to toss that out there. Thanks, Christopher, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ira. I appreciate it, and we'll talk later, my friend. All right. So I asked you this in the start of tonight's show, Christopher, but I have to ask you again after talking with you about all this and even, discovering different angles that I didn't even know about. Why do you suppose you have such an interest in this subject? And do you think that, because other people have asked this question, so I thought I'd throw it out to you. Do you think that there's any special reason why you're so interested? Is it just that, you're out for the truth, or as some of the listeners have asked, might you have been involved in some way, like signals sent to you to make you involved in it or make you interested in it, that kind of thing.
If there was signals sent to me to make me interested in it, they are directly unbeknownst to me. They might be indirect and covert. But the thing I can tell you is this. All I know is I get this incredible surge of energy and anger if I know that someone is covertly destroying me, manipulating me, making me sick. I mean, that's why I stopped smoking cigarettes. It was like I get so angry and I want to do something about it. And if just the idea that children were kidnapped and murdered by the thousands for these scumbags to just figure out how they were going to manipulate all of us eventually, it should be enough for us to get up and start a war. And I don't want, who knows? You might find, I'm not trying to get myself killed, but I'm just expressing myself. That's how my anger is being articulated into words. We should not allow anything like that to ever happen. And if it's true, we should at least find out and bring it to light. And if it's not true, we should bring that to light too and just, discover what the truth is. But unfortunately, there's too much evidence to support the fact that it probably is true. And if it is true, and you're going to let it go on and just enjoy your little stories about Sasquatches tearing up bases, we are screwed, okay? You might as well be as good as dead at that point.
Yeah, well, I agree. And again, that's what they like to do, is throw out these distractions. I always say, if there's a spiral in the sky over here, you got to wonder what's going on behind you.
Sure. And there's this thing that's put out into the public that says, well, the people of Earth, basically, the people of the world in all countries in all respects, are not ready to know. That's a big insult. Who are you to tell me I'm not ready to know? You mean what? It's going to cause a holy war? Guess what? There's one already happening. It's never stopped. It's been going on since forever. So it's not going to change anything. It might even stop the holy war. So there's another reason why it's being kept from us, and I think for the sole reason that we're being kept from being enlightened. If we're enlightened, of course, we can no longer be controlled. And I think what it boils down to is the control is about greed. And in the end, money and greed and power. And there's very few that have the power and the money right now. And they don't want everyone else to have it, because if we're enlightened, we might become something else. We might become not utopian, but in some other way, some other calmer, less greedy, more reciprocal, beautiful society. And these people don't want that. They're greedy, they're evil, and they're power hungry. And that's the way I see it.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly. And we have one last call. We've got Ryan on the line. Welcome aboard, Ryan.
Hey, Michael. How you guys doing tonight?
Oh, great. Been a great show, great conversation, and we welcome you.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm actually at work right now. I'm trying to squeeze this call in, and I just wanted to make a comment about what you guys were discussing about Aaron Alexis. I actually have the news report from CNN and then the Associated Press. From the Associated Press news source, it was claimed that there were Rhode Island police documents that they produced where before the shooting even happened, Aaron Alexis had contacted the police on several occasions claiming that 3 people, 2 men and 1 woman, were following him and beaming signals into his hotel room. And he was constantly moving from hotel to hotel, people's houses, I guess, trying to get away from them, and they kept following him, beaming signals into his room, is what he claimed. And then after that, the news article was from CNN where they claimed that the shotgun had the inscription of "This is my health weapon," which is what you had said, the extremely low frequency waves, which were also used in the mind control experiments through the CIA, MK Ultra, Artichoke, and Chatter that were run by the Russians and the Germans. So just wanted to throw that out there at you to give you a better idea. So when you do research it, this was reported by the mainstream media as well. So it wasn't just from some side source.
Well, that's my mistake, man, because I haven't watched the news in a while, but I want to know more about this for sure. I appreciate you telling me about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to go ahead and go, guys, but maybe you can come on my show, The Secret Teachings, sometime. I'd love to have a discussion with you.
Anytime.
All right.
Good. Well, have a good night, guys.
All right.
You
Thank
too.
you, Ryan. And I'll send you his contact, and I appreciate the call. This has been a very, very, very interesting show. It's not that I love talking about this stuff, but I love exposing this stuff. I love to when they don't want it to be the topic of conversation, that's all the more I want it to be, because the secrets have got to stop, and it's time to get these things out in the open. It's time for everybody to wake up to the fact that what you have been fed as reality is totally false. It's a big stage. It's a Hollywood stage, and you're fed what you're supposed to believe, just like the mainstream media gets fed on teleprompters what they're going to report to you that day and how they're going to report it. Well, that's pretty much, how society has become. Anything out of the norm, you're told to laugh at it, and it's crazy, and stay away from those people. Matter of fact, nowadays, report those people, because we need to get them on medications and make sure that they don't get a gun in their hand. And so that's the kind of mentality that the society has these days. And, we're trying to topple that. We're trying to get the truth out. And anybody that has any more information on anything like this, especially if you've got any kind of proof, by all means, please get a hold of my guest with it. And then I asked you, Christopher, if that should happen, please get a hold of me. I would love to have you back. What I'd like to do is give you the floor to get out anything else that you'd like, any appearances you have coming up, or whatever you want. Go ahead, get it out. Let people know where they can get the CD, where they can see the movie, and all that good stuff. And again, let me thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance to speak my mind. I mean, basically, if you're interested in anything I'm working on, you go to MontaukChronicles.com. We had a long lapse in shipping of the physical discs, but you can see a stream of the movie right away. That lapse is over, and we're preparing to ship for real now. There's a lot of reasons involved, but it's over, and we're moving forward into the shipping stages. So if you go to MontaukChronicles.com, you can order a DVD or a Blu-ray. The quality's beautiful, the sound, picture's beautiful, and there are a ton of extras, so you can kind of conduct your own research on a lot of the materials I picked up on over the 10-year period. I tried to put as much as possible on the discs for you to look through, and I think it has a lot of rewatchability, and certainly the best document on the subject matter at the moment. You have to start somewhere. We're going to be moving into a new volume next. So, just keep an eye out, and I'm going to be out there doing everything I can to assist in the exposure of some of this information that we need to come out with and that we need to discuss. And so that's my website. It's MontaukChronicles.com, and if you want to shoot me an email, I will get back to you eventually.
All right. And Christopher, I so appreciate you being on the show, and you're linked up on our homepage tonight. Tomorrow you'll be on our links page, so we put all our favorite guests there, and you've certainly made that lineup. I tell you, you're doing great work, and you're keeping it real, and I more than anybody, I think, appreciate that so much. And so keep up the good work, and I hope, keep in touch. I'd love to have you back.
Oh, sure thing, Michael. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great night, my friend, and thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, everybody. So there you have it. I knew this was going to be a really good show tonight. I also knew that there would be some kind of what might be called technical glitches. Here's the thing. Okay, it's possible that there was some kind of glitch, but I'll tell you, I look at, on my end here, I have meters that I watch. I've got all kinds of indicators that tell me what's going on. Volume, connections, net pings, net uplinks, memories, computer percentage, all that stuff. I get it all right here in my face. Everything was fine. But then all of a sudden my bumper music disappeared on my board. I mean, the song I was rolling with disappeared. I understand that we got cut out a couple times. So, and it's like they try to frustrate you and they want you to give up. And this is what they'll do. They'll make things as hard as they can when you get into subjects like this. But folks, I've said it before, I'll say it again. We cover everything, and I'm glad we covered this tonight. It's fascinating topic. I've got a couple other guests down the line in the next month or two who will be joining us about this same topic. And they've got some angles on it as well. So it's something I'd like to continue to talk about because I find it interesting in one sense, but in another sense, I have to say that, I'd have to say that the most disturbing thing about all of this would be, I guess the boys who were abducted and tortured and used as pawns in the master plan of evil. I mean, that's the most disturbing thing to me. And you got to wonder, how many were victims? I mean, we're being told thousands. And they're not light for that. I mean, I know of cases of the CIA back in the day where they would meet assets in hotel rooms. They'd slip them LSD. Next thing you know, this guy would jump out the window and, well, he was on drugs. But the truth is, they were mind controlled to do these things. Who knows if the Montauk Project is still ongoing? Who really knows how deep these cavernous lavatories stretch? I mean, I'm pretty sure we know there's a lot of underground facility. Why wouldn't there be there? Who knows what vast secrets they actually hold? The world may never know the full truth of what has gone on beneath the sandy soil of Montauk, but I'll tell you what, we'll keep asking the questions until they shut us up, and they tried tonight. They did not succeed. Folks, I want to thank each and every one of you, wherever it is you may be, around the globe, in the chat room, wherever you are, especially over there on Late Night in the Midlands and on the Dark Matter Radio Network and K98 Talk and High Point. Thank you all for carrying the show. Anybody else, if you've got a network, no matter where you are in the world, and you're interested in picking up the show, let me know. I'm open to it, long as you don't change or alter anything. It's all good here in the LNM hood. I'm Michael Vera. This has been a broadcast of Late Night in the Midlands on the LNM Radio Network. Keep your eyes posted to the sky, because you never know what you might see. But when you do see something, make sure you look the other way too, because a lot of times the distraction's put in front of you. So the truth behind you. You see, they want that truth to stay behind you. And by all means, keep your ears posted to this broadcast, because quite frankly, you never know what you might learn. Good night, everybody. We'll be back with you tomorrow night for the last frequency. Good night.